straightforward. You want to shut down the media. You don't want a media that opposes you. You don't want a media that highlights the opposition political parties. You want a media instead that gives you tongue baths, you know, that shines your shoes, that talks about how wonderful you are, that constantly praises you. You want every media in the country to be like Fox News or One America News or, you know, these right-wing billionaire-owned outlets. So what do? You get billionaires to own all the media, right-wing billionaires. But owning the media can be a pain in the ass. It can be expensive. It can be a money-losing proposition. So how do you do it? You say to them, hey, you go buy the media, and I'll make sure that whatever you're losing on your media property, I mean, Jeff Bezos is losing about $100 million a year on the Washington Post, from what I've read. Whatever you're losing on your media properties, I'll make sure you make far more than that in government contracts. And, you know, Viktor Orban did this in Hungary. He reached out to a bunch of media oligarchs and said, start buying up the media and I'll give you government contracts and all kinds of favors and things. And sure enough, all the media now, there is no independent, there is no free speech TV left. There is no Sirius XM left. There is no, although Sirius XM is owned by a billionaire, but at least we've got a progressive channel on it, right? There is nothing, no left-wing media of any significance or consequence at all in Hungary anymore, or in Russia. And when you look at the billionaires here, and by the way, Viktor Orban invited Republicans over to Budapest back in 2022, the CPAC. I used to broadcast from the CPAC conferences back in the day. And he got up in front of them and he said to this group of Republicans, he said, have your own media. It's the only way to point out the insanity of the progressive left. So anyhow, you look at, Elon Musk. He flips Twitter to X and starts, promoting Donald Trump relentlessly. And what happens? He gets multi-billion-dollar contracts from the federal government. Mark Zuckerberg, Meta and Facebook, starts filtering in ways that help right-wing content and suppress left-wing content, or at least so is alleged, and certainly seems to be the lived experience of many people. And now Meta has got these multi-billion-dollar contracts with the federal government. Larry Ellison and his family, David, his son, he owns Paramount, CBS, TikTok, or he and his son, between the two of them. And now they're getting, he starts with Oracle, which now has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the federal government. Jeff Bezos, the Washington Post, now, Blue Origin. Hey, let's go to, let's help out NASA and things. They're all, and not to mention Amazon Web Services, data services. So whatever they lose in their media operations, they're making back hugely. And here are the countries that I was able, just with a quick web search, to find are doing the exact same thing, where the government invited billionaires to buy the media and then gave them big media contracts, or big non-media contracts, to soften the blow. The Czech Republic, Serbia, Slovenia, Turkey, India, Brazil, the Philippines, Colombia, Tunisia, Turkey, Peru, and Ghana. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And it produces headlines like these. These are actual articles that I found that, document this stuff. How oligarchs seize Central Europe's media. Serbia, state influence on media ownership. Media in the Balkans, the rise of the oligarchs. Media oligarchs go shopping. The media in Indonesia, journalism between state and oligarchs. And now here in the United States, these are actual headlines. When billionaire government contractors are also media moguls. So anyhow, this is what's going on. So how do we deal with this? Well, number one, when Democrats regain power, we need to start seriously looking at breaking up these monopolies and going after these people. And now the Democrats have announced, get ready, corporations, the subpoenas are coming. And number two, we need public pressure. People need to be speaking out against this. We did it with Jimmy Kimmel. We didn't pull it off with Stephen Colbert, but we did it with Jimmy Kimmel. And we need to be doing it with more and more media. We need to be pointing them out. I have noticed the comments sections on articles in the Washington Post almost invariably include just ripping Jeff Bezos a new one for the way that he's spinning the news and he's gutting that classic newspaper. So let's get active, friends, and support independent media.
You didn't send tanks, they didn't break doors, they just bought the headlines and called it free press. A handshake in a high-rise, a contract in the night, a billionaire's whisper turns the truth out of sight. No sirens in the city, no boots upon the ground, just stock deals in silence where the watchdogs once howled. They said, give us good coverage, we'll make it worth your while. And the cameras kept on rolling with a patriotic smile. Now every station's singing from the very same page. Another velvet curtain on a gilded cage. Bought and sold, the story's been told. Wrapped in a flag and dipped in gold. No chains to see, no bars to hold. Just the truth that's quietly bought and sold. Raise your voice, don't let it fold. Power feels what can't be controlled. They don't need guns when they own the mold. That's how a free press gets bought and sold. From Budapest to warnings to a stateside grin, on the airwaves if you wanna win. From Reagan's pen to the merger spree, they carved up the news like Monopoly. Drive coast to coast, hear the same refrain. Different towns, but the script's the same. When money talks, the anchors bow. Tell me who's reporting now. Bought and sold, the story's been told. Wrapped in a flag and dipped in gold. No chains to see, no bars to hold. Just the truth that's quietly bought and sold. Raise your voice, don't let it fold. Power fears what can't be controlled. They don't need guns when they own the mold. That's how a free press gets bought and sold. No midnight rain, no shattered glass, just silence signed and kneel for class. If we don't speak, if we don't stand, they'll buy the truth right out of our hands.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Health Justice Now, Single Payer and What Comes Next by Timothy Faust. And this is from the introduction. A secret scream rings through America. It rings down the sterile fluorescent hallways of our hospitals. It rings over our rural towns and our native reservations. It rings through our prisons, the bellies of our great cities. It rings in our farms, in our fields, our streets, and our sewers, our bodies, and our blood. And we are cursed to never hear it clearly until, at last, we realize it has been our own mouth screaming and we are lost. A child born today inherits, in that secret, a new American squalor, the skeletal remains of the American cities, the bleached bones of the American suburbs. This secret is a birthright of continual exploitation, pumped for labor and drained of cash and then punished for the resulting suffering. punished for being hungry, punished for being sick, punished for being pregnant, punished for being poor, punished for being black or brown, punished for being queer, for being unlucky, for being. At the base of that suffering is lodged a little truth, like a knot in the stomach. In America, sickness makes you poor, and poorness makes you sick. This is a book about that relationship and why it happens, and why it's unnecessary, and what we can do to fix it. The cosmic whirling of God's great slot machine has not determined that some people are fated to suffer while others flourish. We have the resources to take care of everyone, and yet we refuse to do so. Your medical debt and medical bills are unnecessary, but we have chosen to make them necessary. These are structural problems with structural causes, and many of them share roots in how we pay for health care. This is a book about health care and health finance. They are different. Health care is anything that helps you stay safe and healthy. It's a kind of freedom from and within your own body. Health finance is the method by which we as a country pay for that freedom, and by which we decide who gets to have it and who doesn't. Health care is more than what happens to you in the hospital. Health care is whether your home makes you sick, or your food makes you sick, or your environment makes you sick, or whether you have enough money to afford the things that keep you healthy. In America, the structure of corporate health care has convinced us that some people deserve health care and some people don't. This is a book about that corporate health finance, about private insurance and private insurers. For half a century, they've convinced us that they're the only things that keep us, or could ever keep us, from the utter financial ruination of illness. They've sold us different inadequate insurance plans and persuaded us that this is a form of great liberty, while chipping away at our freedoms for profit and holding our bodies and our children's bodies hostage. This is a book about single-payer health care, a health finance model in which we pool our abundant collective resources to provide health care to all people. It is a common model across the world. As we will discuss in this book, we have the potential not just to enact a single-payer program in America, but to build the greatest health care program among any so-called developed democracy. Here is my profession of faith. I believe beyond any doubt that single-payer is demonstrably sound and imminently feasible. I believe a properly ambitious and well-structured single-payer program will do more than any other American social program of this generation to soothe the burns, to resuscitate the spirit, to nourish the moral will of the American people. I believe it will loosen the loathsome manacles of American health finance, an exploitative institution that profits by plundering from us our own bodily autonomy, and that anchors a larger exploitation that holds those whom we love as captive leverage to guarantee our servitude to abusive employers or domestic partners, to those who seek to dominate us both in the office and in the hospital. I believe this nation owes its people, whose labor has created its rich banquet, the safety and agency of health care. I believe this health care is greater in scope than that which happens upon an operating table. I believe that housing, food, income, and more, the components of basic human dignity, are health care. And I believe our work is that of striving toward justice for all people. And I therefore believe, I have to believe, that single-payer health care is our moral imperative. Single-payer is our tool. Single-payer is our weapon. Single-payer is our first step. But single-payer on its own is not the goal. This book is about health justice. Healthcare is personal, so I want to start this book personally by introducing two friends of mine, Steve Way and Kyle Kolick. They're two guys about my age, I'm 30, who live in North New Jersey. They're sweet, gentle people, and probably the most charismatic pair of friends I've met in my entire life. They make me laugh until my face hurts, and we like watching pro wrestling together. They're also being utterly broken by our American healthcare system, and it's keeping them from living their lives. Steve has muscular dystrophy. The muscle and tissues that hold his body together are eating themselves. He's doing pretty good, all things considered. He beat his original life expectancy of 18, and now probably has a long life ahead of him. Steve needs a wheelchair to move and a ventilator to help him breathe. The book, Health Justice Now, Timothy Faust.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Friday, TGIF, Shabbat Shalom, Juma Mubarak. It's the end of the week, the beginning of the weekend, and a lot of wild stuff. News breaking. The Supreme Court says to Donald Trump, no, sir, or son, you cannot. Amazing. We'll get to that in just a moment. Also, is the Trump-Epstein crisis nearing the critical mass that turned Watergate into a White House collapse? I think this is all part of the same story, frankly. And as the Department of Justice hails the authoritarianism of Trump with a banner that only dick-tators would love, Trump just greenlit removing refugees. Is this just cover for what they're doing, or a new policy, or what? We'll talk about all that in just a minute. The second hour of our program, the entire second hour, will be Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, the former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls for the hour. She represents Washington State. She is the person who said to Pam Bondi, would you please turn around and, apologize to or acknowledge these victims of Epstein's abuse? And, when Bondi went off on her screeching tirade about the Dow at 50,000 and whatnot. Well, actually, that was Nadler, but it was Jayapal who did that. So it'll be interesting to get her take on how things are shaking out. But she'll be with us for the whole hour, taking your calls in a national Progressive Townhall meeting. In the third hour of our program, 4 FBI agents, interviews of an underage girl, she between 13 and 15 years old, who said that Trump sexually assaulted her and then beat her, were removed from the DOJ documents as Trump is claiming he's totally exonerated. And Bob Kennedy is defending glyphosate, Roundup, the stuff that causes cancer, according to multiple lawsuits. Oh, what a friggin' hypocrite. He even won a lawsuit proving that glyphosate causes cancer. And now he's like, yes, Donald Trump just ordered. Well, we'll get into that in the third hour of the program. But to start out, the Supreme Court this morning said to Donald Trump, as I've been saying to you for a year now, the Constitution is quite clear. Article 1 of the Constitution, in fact, Article 1, Section 7 says that only Congress has the power to impose taxes, and tariffs are taxes. It's that simple. Trump can't do this without congressional authorization. Now, there's a huge but there, and I'll get to that in just a second. But, what I find amazing about this is you've got Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just tweeting, this is a win for working Americans. The folks struggling to put food on the table, the small business owners. Trump promised to lower costs, yet his reckless, illegal tariffs caused prices to absolutely skyrocket. Only Congress now to want to be king can impose taxes. So that's the quote far left, Jasmine Crockett. And then here, I got this morning from the Pacific Legal Foundation. This is the group that's out there arguing before the Supreme Court and everywhere else, things like, climate change is a hoax and what. It's a right-wing think tank, right, or a right-wing legal advocacy group. And they just said the Supreme Court's decision is a win for the separation of powers in the American people. So, there you go. See, which raises this larger question. Oh, and the way that Trump is going to get around this, let me just share this with you. I believe this is it right now. This is how Trump is going to get around this. He's got the Trade Act of 1974, Section 122, says that he can impose tariffs up to 15% for 150 days, basically for any reason, because of our balance of payments, because of our trade deficit. And then in 1930, Section 338 of the Trade Act of 1930 allows the president to impose tariffs of up to 50% with no time limit if the president determines that these countries discriminate against us with regard to trade. So here's my prediction. He's going to be using one or both of those things. He's going to keep on doing it. But, we'll see how that plays out. But the larger question, and what I think this plays into, is that Trump is slipping. And the question is, how badly is he slipping? And is he slipping as bad as Nixon did in 1974 with Watergate? Now, keep in mind, the Watergate story broke in '72, and Nixon won the election that year. It was a everybody was like, oh, it's a third-rate burglary. That was Nixon's phrase. And the media treated it like it was a third-rate burglary. And it wasn't until 2 years later that you had, the Barry Goldwater and 2 other senators walk over to the White House and say, Dick, you're gone. You're out of here. And 2 days later, Nixon resigned. So is it possible? I think that we are seeing a moment in time here. The first piece of this, the first big piece of this, was when Pam Bondi just started screeching about the Dow Jones Industrial Average when asked if she was prosecuting any of Epstein's co-conspirators. The second bookend of this was yesterday when Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, was arrested by British police rather than being politely invited to, give testimony and whatnot. And the king came out and said, he's on his own. And the third piece of it is this decision that dropped this morning, where 3 of reliable right-wing stalwarts, including 2 Trump appointees, Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch, and John Roberts, who wrote the decision, said, no, Donald, the Constitution doesn't make you king. Congress still has the power to tax. So I think that what we're seeing right now in real time is Donald Trump kind of wandering into the territory of Richard Nixon. I mean, in terms of, Nixon going down in flames. I mean, this is another piece of this. The recent Department of Justice release. This just came out in the last couple days, but this was in the DOJ release. This reference to this was this testimony by this young girl between 13 and 15 years old, who was interviewed by the FBI 4 times. They took her very seriously. And there's just a reference to it in the documents that were released. The actual FBI interviews have been suppressed. They have been hidden from us. But she claimed that Donald Trump forced her to perform oral sex on him, that when he did, she bit him, and he beat her up and kicked her out of the car and punched her. And, this kind of stuff, I mean, that made a Drudge headline yesterday. I mean, let that sink in, right? Matt Drudge has been reliably Republican since whenever he started the Drudge Report. I think it was in the 80s. It's just, forever. And yet, here we are. So I think that it's really starting to metastasize beyond just, even beyond just this whole Epstein thing. I mean, you've got Bondi and Patel, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, both insisting that the investigation is now closed and you're not going to see anything else. We are going to protect these guys. You got Kristi Noem and Kash Patel refusing to give the Minnesota police evidence of 2 different murders, Alex Preddy and Renee Good. You've got ICE defying over 4,400 court orders and refusing to let members of Congress into their brutal concentration camps. You've got Trump going after the FBI agents who uncovered Putin's efforts to make him president in 2016. You got Trump's family making over $4 billion off the presidency in less than a year. And you got Trump sucking up to Putin. At what point do Republicans, because this is in their court, right? I mean, Democrats would have him out of there tomorrow morning if they could. At what point do Republicans say, enough already? And do what Barry Goldwater did and say to Trump, time for you to leave, buddy. It was Barry Goldwater, Hugh Scott, and John Rhodes. I think that we are close to it. Now, I'm not predicting that Trump is going to go down in flames, this week, this month, or even necessarily this year. But I think that we're going to see this in stages. I think the first stage is going to be after the primaries are done, which will be mostly, the late summer. You're going to see a lot of Republicans in Congress just stop playing ball with Trump because they don't have to anymore. They needed to not have him attack them during the primaries. They got through the primaries. They're in safe red seats. They're going to start going with this. And then the second is going to be after, assuming that he loses or that the Republicans lose the House and maybe the Senate in November. I don't know what's going to happen next year, whether Trump is going to take like a medical leave of absence or whether he's going to clamp down and turn America into a total fascist state. But and that's the problem. I mean, right now he's looking at the, bombing Iran this weekend as a possible distraction from the Epstein files. But, how this is going to play out, this is going to be interesting. Keep an eye on this thing. I think we have, if we haven't crossed the river Styx here, we're halfway across it in the boat, Trump this morning, he was in a meeting with the governors when he heard that he had lost the case at the Supreme Court. And he started dropping F-bombs and screaming, apparently just yelling, screaming about this thing. I mean, this guy is on the verge of losing.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. And welcome back. Don in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Hey, Don, what's on your mind today?
Oh, hi, Tom. Well, things certainly are happening at a rapid pace.
Yes.
I think it was Lenin who said that nothing seems to happen for 50 or 60 years, and then all of a sudden, in 2 or 3 months, decades worth of events take place. And, we see, clearly using, the U.S. fleet and military and threatening Iran, as partially for the, to draw people away from the Epstein files, and partly because the Israelis, that's what they want, and they have tremendous influence.
Oh, Netanyahu owns Trump.
Oh, yeah, he does.
As does Putin.
As does Putin, yeah. And, and then at the same time, this stuff with the tariffs, one of the reasons, and nobody ever seems to talk about this, Trump, but, people used to say that it's a sales tax. Tariffs hit the bottom 90% of the population.
Hardest.
And allow him to reduce taxes yet more and not to cut things out so it'd be really obvious because they have some money coming in. But, tariffs are terrible. Targeted, I'm like you, I'm from Michigan originally. Targeted tariffs and with a rational policy used with them are one thing, but this crazed tariffs on everything is
right. They have to be passed by Congress because everybody has, particularly people who might be thinking about building factories in the United States, need to know that those tariffs are going to be in place for the next 20 years, because that's your return on investment time for building a factory.
Right. Business is like stability.
Yeah, and if it's just the whim of some boy king in the White House. Nobody's going to take that seriously and invest $500 million or $1 billion in building a factory. So, yeah, very, very well said, Don. I completely agree. Thank you so much for calling and making the point. Blue in Santa Cruz, California. Hey, Blue, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
The question I have not heard yet is who is the guy that followed Epstein around and wrote down the who, what, why, where, and when of everything he did all day, all night for years? Who was that guy?
I don't know that he had such a guy. Do you?
No, I have no clue. Who wrote down, who wrote the Epstein files? If it's a
well, it appears. If you look at this most recent document release, you've got, Epstein himself writing emails, for example, saying that he has sympathy for Brett Kavanaugh because Brett Kavanaugh is being accused of rape and Epstein has been accused of rape, and isn't that a terrible thing? And, these weren't coming from his guy. They were coming from him. I have a feeling that Epstein, he might have had a secretary or personal assistant for some things, but I don't think that he let anybody into his world that close. Maybe Ghislaine Maxwell, but when he died, she was long gone. He had a new girlfriend. So, in fact, his new girlfriend, I forget her name, is who he left a lot of his estate to. So, I just don't. I don't think there's that guy, Blue. I get it. The most rich people have somebody like that, but
yeah. Well, okay, you got this big giant list.
Yeah.
To me, okay, to get a list, somebody has to actually sit down and write it out, you know?
Yeah, well, there is that. And, maybe
put it all together in a nice package and let it go.
I think if there was such a person that we'd know about it by now and that there would be more information. But, there's a hell of a lot that we still don't know. I mean, there's still 3 million documents that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are hiding from us. Lou, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. When Ronald Reagan took over America in 1981, we handed him a brand gleaming new country. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, Jack Kennedy, they had built America. We had brand new schools, brand new hospitals, brand new interstate highway systems, brand new airports, infrastructure. We were the envy of the world. And then Republicans came along and they said, well, you just cut the top tax rate from 74% down to 27% and everything will trickle down. Instead, what do we get? Billionaires and poverty. They said, hey, just deregulate guns, and an armed society is a polite society. Instead, we've got more school shootings than anywhere in the world. They said, just kill off civics and history classes in our schools and liberate our young people to focus on science and math. And now we've got people who don't know how our government works. I mean, it just goes on from there. There's a whole rant about it over at HartmannReport.com titled FDR Saved America, Then the GOP Ripped Us Apart. Check it out.
You can feel it in the air. Gold rooms and glass windows trembling. A storm is rising over the White House. Trump stands tall in a gilded room, lightning carving up the gloom, shadows crawling up the walls of gold, secrets bought and stories sold. Epstein's name like thunder rolls, echoes in forgotten files and empty holes. 3 million pages missing truth. A storm is coming for the roof. You can run from the headlines, hide behind the flame, but history remembers every name. This is the gathering storm, Watergate reborn, lightning at the window, the silence before the dawn. Trump hears the thunder roar, Epstein at the door. When the walls start shaking, the gold won't shield you anymore.
There you go, 23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Critics shred. This is hysterical. Donald Trump had the Department of Justice, the building that has a statue out in front of it of Lady Justice holding the scales of justice, the balance scales, with a blindfold on. The equal justice under law, I think that's what it says on the Supreme Court building. But here's Lady Justice with her blindfold on, right? Justice is blind. We are not here to serve any king, emperor, president, administration. We are here to serve the law. We are here to serve justice. That's the Justice Department. And they just hung like this 70-foot tall, well, I don't know the exact length, but it's just a massive banner with a picture of Donald Trump's face, just like Hitler used to hang all over Berlin, right, and all over Nuremberg when they held the rallies. He just hung this giant banner at the Justice Department. And, I mean, and it says, at the bottom it says, "Make America Safe Again," right? And people, Ken Delanian, the Justice and Intelligence correspondent at MS Now, says, this is a stunning confirmation of the grim reality, which is that Donald Trump has seized control of the once independent Justice Department and is using it to pursue his political objectives, including trying to punish his perceived enemies. It's just incredible. Former Representative Barbara Comstock, a Republican, says, nothing says justice is blind like hanging a Dear Leader banner at DOJ. See, I'm telling you, this is the fact that Republicans are fleeing this guy. You know, from Steve Schmidt to Adam Kinzinger to Liz Cheney. I mean, that tells me Trump is not, he's not going to make it for 4 years, I don't think. Sarah Longwell, Republican strategist, writes, I can't imagine why anybody would call him a fascist. She's being sarcastic, of course. And now the Trump administration is saying that the detention, that they're going to go out and take down refugees. I'm talking actual people who have fled persecution, who have been approved by our federal government to be in the United States, but have not yet acquired a green card. That, hey, if they don't have a green card yet, screw them, get them out of here, especially if they have brown or black skin. Out they go. These are immigrants who came in lawfully, who were given permission, who have documentation. They've also suspended green card processing for a whole bunch of countries. This could apply to well over 100,000 people. And Mara Verajah, President and CEO of Global Refuge, says, these are families the United States government already screened more rigorously than any category of immigrant. Any category. Only after years of background checks, biometric screenings, and in-person interviews were they invited to rebuild their lives here. This is nuts. Well, it's not nuts. It's white supremacy. This is just pure racism. Nothing else.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's astonishing. We are watching America be turned into a Nazi state. It's just breathtaking. And welcome to the Thom Hartmann Book Club, Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America by Michael Eric Dyson, who was a guest on our program a while back. This is from page 86. One of the great privileges of whiteness is not to see color, not to see race, and not to pay a price for ignoring it, except, of course, when you're called on it. But even then, the price pales quite literally in comparison to the high price black folk pay for being black. We pay a price too for not even being able to derive recognition and financial reward for the styles that make the world want to be black so bad that they don't mind looking like us as long as they never ever have to be us. If the appropriators can freely rip off our culture with no consequences, those who revise racial history, the fourth stage of white racial grief, are even less accountable for their deeds. The way of the racial revisionist when it comes to black life and history is simply to rewrite it. Their motto is, it didn't happen that way. There's a flood of writing that tells us that the Civil War wasn't really about slavery, but about an effort to defend states' rights. But, my friend, you've got to put yourself in our place and see the absurdity of such a claim. Defend the rights of states to do what? To enslave blacks. But even here, the irresistible logic of whiteness, that is irresistible to whites themselves, and to all of us who are subjected to white whim, springs into full action. White American history is so powerful that even when it loses, it wins, at least in skirmishes within whiteness itself. From the right wing, there is the belief that the Civil War was fought over the ability of individual states to beat back a federal government out to impose its will. From the left wing, there's the belief that the Civil War was a conflict between the planter class and the proletariat. In each case, race as the main reason for the war is skillfully rewritten, or really written out. Slavery is rewritten too. Some white Christian apologists contend that black folk needed slavery to save their souls or to rescue their cultures. A contemporary twist on this argument radiates in thinkers like Dinesh D'Souza, who claims that American blacks brought here through slavery are now doing far better than their African kin. Some white critics argue that since blacks sold other blacks into slavery, bondage was a black man's problem, not a white man's burden. But revisionists would much rather describe the dehumanization of black folk as little more than a commercial transaction. It's another way of washing their hands of racial responsibility. The effort to rewrite history surfaces in how Malcolm X is treated in the mainstream.
It hardly seems likely that the culture he fought with all his heart could be depended on to grasp his true meaning. Malcolm is often read as an apostle of violence, as a frightful figure consumed by destructive rage. Yet the truth is far more complex, and Malcolm was far more complicated. But isn't the autobiography of Malcolm X so enduringly appealing because it shows Malcolm giving up hatred as a means to racial justice? Now, Malcolm X believed in the liberation of black folk from the mental and psychological chains of white supremacy. He was not committed to nonviolence as a way of life or as a method of social strategy. He believed that such a commitment prevents the full realization of black emancipation. Yet he was not personally violent. As Ossie Davis says in his eulogy, responding to the claim that Malcolm preached hate and was a fanatic and a racist, quote, "Did you even talk to Brother Malcolm? Was he ever himself associated with violence or any public disturbance?" End quote. The rage that flowed in Malcolm's veins was the rage against a force of whiteness that aimed to wash its black kin from the face of the earth. The urge to rewrite black history occasionally gives way to the final stage of white racial grief, which is simply, when it comes to race, dilute it. That is, to argue that black stuff doesn't just plague black folk. To summarize, bad stuff happens to everyone. This argument surfaced in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and that storm certainly hit black folk, but it hit white folk too. This is the sordid version of reverse American exceptionalism. It is the same Me Too impulse that flares in the bitter battle against affirmative action. Beloved, I can't help but notice that affirmative action is the bee in so many of your bonnets. You look around in your classrooms and you think every black person is there because they got an unfair shake from the system. You look at your job and you think that your black coworker got an unjust nod of approval from the powers that be. You never stop to think how the history of whiteness in America is one long scroll of affirmative action. You never stop to think that Babe Ruth never had to play the greatest players of his generation, just the greatest white players. You never stop to think that most of our presidents never rose to the top because they bested the competition, only just the white competition. White privilege is a self-selecting tool that keeps you from having to compete with the best. The history of white folk gaining access to Harvard, Princeton, or Yale is the history of white folk deciding ahead of the game that you are superior. You argue that slots in school should be reserved for your kin because, after all, they are smarter, more disciplined, better suited, and more deserving than inferior blacks. That's like concluding that the Cleveland Cavaliers can't possibly win the NBA championship because they're down 3-1 to the Golden State Warriors. Throw in the towel and call it a series. But they must play the series to determine the winner. Whiteness is having all the advantages on your side, the referees blowing the whistle for you, the arena packed with only your fans. In fact, whiteness means you never even have to play the game at all, at least not in head-to-head matchups with the talent and skill of black folks. Here's We Cannot Stop by Michael Eric Dyson.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls today on Anything Goes Weekend. Russ in Hickory Hill, Illinois. Hey, Russ, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I come to you, Tom, because you know more than I do. You know, you're talking about these tariffs were overturned. I don't know if you heard this. We grew by 1.3%, and it was supposed to be 2.5.
Yeah.
Our trade deficit is at an all-time record.
Yep.
We're limping along. I come to you. I mean, did you see him yesterday in Georgia? This guy was close enough to film him sweating like a pig. Nobody's showing up at his rallies. It's when we go into a recession, because I tell you what, he's got to be sued, and all his whole family when this is done. They've got to be sued for everything they sold. But what do you think? Spring? I think fall, because it looks like we're going down the toilet now.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tom?
I think you're right, Russ.
We're limping.
I think you're right, and you know, and the national debt, by the way, is hitting $38 trillion.
Did you hear this one too, Tom?
I beg your pardon?
That is a rough job. $62 trillion they predict over the next 12 years we'll hit.
Yeah.
We'll be at $62 trillion.
Yeah, which is mind-boggling. I mean, I don't know of any developed country.
So what do you think?
Japan got up to 200% of GDP for a while, but you know, it threw them into a recession that lasted more than a decade. So when you look at, you know, all of these things that Trump is doing, you know, that unemployment is, you know, or employment rather sucks, that GDP growth sucks, that our trade deficit is worse than it's ever been, our national, you know, debt is and deficits are worse than they've ever been. You add all this up, and this is the culmination of the Reagan presidency. This is the absolute logical endpoint. And yeah, I think it's killing him. I think it's killing Republicans. I think that their chances in the November elections are collapsing. I think the Democrats are a Senate. I think that Clio dynamics, Peter Turchin's theory that, you know, history goes in 40-year cycles, 40 years conservative, 40 years progressive, 40 years conservative, and you can kind of track these back all the way back to the American Revolution. I think he's right, and I think that a giant swing is coming, assuming that Trump cannot succeed in turning America into a full-blown Nazi state. Now, he's trying very hard to do that. He's got, you know, Nazi-like, you know, brown shirts out on the streets. He's got, you know, Nazi-like actions towards judges. He's got Nazi-like, you know, banners hanging from the Department of Justice and the Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. He's behaving like a Nazi. He's got people around him who are openly Nazis and proud of it. And you've got this congressional candidate now down in Texas who just comes right out and says, yes, I'm a Nazi, and he's a Republican. He just won a primary. He's gonna, in all probability, be in Congress next year. So yeah, I think so, Russ. I think your analysis is spot on. Thank you. Jerry in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Well, happy anything goes day.
There you go.
Yeah. My comment is about the Andrew formerly known as Prince.
Yep.
And the comment is that if you noticed, what the Crown was most important, thought was most important to them when they arrested him was his business dealings with Epstein, not necessarily anything regarding children.
Well,
but
this is because he was the United Kingdom's trade representative to the United States, and he had inside information, and he was handing that inside information off to Epstein, and that's what we found in this 3 million document dump were emails that either suggested or nailed that down. I'm not I haven't been super following what's going on with Andrew, but that's what they're really flipped out about. I mean, that's clear violation of law. He's looking at life in prison for that. That's a kind of a variation on treason.
Well, correct, but my point was, what gets the headlines for that? Child victims. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what's going to take Trump down. This 13-year-old who says that she bit him when he forced her to have oral sex, I don't think that's going to go away. I mean, you know, that and the FBI is hiding at least 3 interviews with her, and they took her very seriously apparently. Go ahead.
I've got time for one more comment.
Yeah.
If we do win back both the House and the Senate, people have asked, I forget if it's either AOC or Jasmine Crockett, about impeachment, and one of them said, well, where do I start? I'll tell you where you start. You start with the emoluments clause, because, look, at one point he posted on his Truth Social a picture of him with a robe and a crown, like he's a king, and you just it's a case that tries itself. You just list every way here his family has profited from that, and then you say, okay, is this what you want?
Well, you know how Alexei Navalny nearly brought down Vladimir Putin was with his nonprofit anti-corruption group. I forget the exact name of it, but anti-corruption was part of the name of it. And what he was doing was he was pointing out how Putin had made billions of dollars off being president of Russia. And that was the thing that nearly took down Putin. And I agree with you. I think that the corruption of the Trump crime family is, once the sex stuff is off the headlines, which may never happen, but the secondary stuff is the corruption. Trump's made $4 billion so far. In 12 months, 13 months. That's just
say
like
one more
wrong.
thing in my closing argument? I would say, look, Bob Menendez and his wife went to prison for it.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. John in Niles, Michigan. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I'd like to do just a really short piece on constitutional jeopardy, like the game show Jeopardy, to add a little humor and levity and shining a bright light on a very dark, ugly, and evil entity. And the first one is Espionage for 400. What was the espionage film starring Sean Connery? And that is What is From Russia with Love. What is the espionage film starring Denzel Washington? What is The Manchurian Candidate? And what dictators built had construction projects to build concentration camps? Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Donald Trump. Yeah. And I can go on here. How many lies did Donald Trump say in his first administration? What are 30,573 lies? Wow. And here's the Epstein files for 200. How many times has Donald Trump been mentioned in the Epstein files? 13,000 times.
No, it's either the official number is 34 or 38,000 right now, but Raskin says that when he looked at the unredacted files, there was over 1 million mentions of Trump.
Yeah. Yep. And religion for 300. Which of Jesus' disciples said, "Feed the poor, care for the sick and dying"? That is Matthew. Mm-hmm. And just a couple of others here. Environment for 700. How many Americans can no longer get home insurance? And that's for hurricanes, floods, fires, and tornadoes. That's 11.3 million homes.
Whoa.
And environment for 800. The tipping point of no return to save planet Earth to prevent mass of humanity is 2035.
Wow. Thank you, John.
That's all I have, Don.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Game Show host. Nate in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Hey, Tom, always a pleasure. So it looks like I called on the right thing with the content yesterday, and without presuming, maybe you could work my concern into her when she joins her program. But my biggest fear is the midterms, even heading into the general, is the seeming apparent rise of these unrealistic, unfair, and unnecessary moral litmus emerging from the far left and young people that, for the next decade and beyond, our singular focus must be winning elections and restoring firm Democratic control in the House, just like it was from FDR to 94? Mm-hmm. And I really, really, really believe and worry that the younger generation, because of their unique political experiences, living with this man for the last 10 decades, is seeking perfection when it does not exist. Yeah. Not just in politics, but in every person. This pursuit of ideological purity threatens to erode not just our ability to build and broad coalitions required for beating this guy, but to continue that winning into the next 20, 30 years. Yeah. I mean, this is going to take so long.
No, it's a good rant, Nate. The area where I see this as being truly problematic is the Democratic Socialists of America, who are now talking about, they were just campaigning in those states where you had fusion voting or the equivalent of it, where you could be on the ballot, but you didn't hurt the Democratic Party. Now this rapper who is running the organization wants to extend this to 20 states or more. And that could take down the Democratic presidential nominee in 2028. And there's no doubt in my mind that they will be getting huge support, maybe even from Russia, like the Greens did, with, what's her name, sitting there next to Putin at dinner, and certainly from the Republicans. So, that is a very real concern of mine. And
just one last real thing, when you brought up the DSA, like any sort of protest in Detroit, there is inevitably a DSA type railing against the Democrats. Yeah. Railing,
here in Oregon, they've identified our governor, who's really good, as an enemy of the people, right? I mean, it's just like these people they've gone off the edge. Nate, thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Jill Stein is who I was thinking of. 45 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here on Anything Goes Weekend. And just a reminder, Pramila Jayapal in the next hour. And welcome back. Tyrone in Harlem, New York. Hey, Tyrone, how are you today? What's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Tom, I'm concerned because our effort to remain with moral and ethical boundaries leave us vulnerable to a person that have no moral or ethical boundaries. This man,
well said,
because this man is doing all that he's doing, and when we get a little victory is, the terrorists, and you already mentioned how he could get around that, and I believe he will do it wholeheartedly. Our problem is, as I see it, is that when we get a good win, and we rest on our laurels, meaning that okay, we've done enough. He's already been hurt. He should leave. Even if he leave the White House tomorrow, he still have set up a situation where he could still run this country as from a shadow government, mainly because he was able to stop legislation and he wasn't in the White House.
That's right. He has done generational damage to this country, Tyrone.
Yes.
Generational.
So I'm wondering, how is it we're going to get through this without becoming the bad people? Because that's what we're trying not to do. We're not trying to become him, but we're trying to be able to rectify the problems that he has caused. Yeah. And that, I don't see how we're going to get around doing that without, as I say, breaking some eggs.
Yeah.
I that's my concern. We don't want to become the evil we're fighting against, but we don't see how we could get around that.
Yep. Yeah, it's the old Wetico problem. This is the horrible conundrum that the Native Americans faced as settlers invaded their lands. If you fight back, you lose. If you don't fight back, you lose. If you run away, they'll eventually get you anyway. It's a tough one.
That's why I'm looking at this. I'm like, I don't see how we're going to get around this without really fighting back. I know we're fighting back to a certain extent, but once it gets so like we can't go past a certain part because we're not going to that point where they have already gone there. The Steve Bannon said, "Listen, man, we're going to deconstruct this administrative state."
Yep.
And the Republican Party had already said that they don't want our American government to work for everybody, only for certain people.
Yep.
And they showing it.
Wealthy white men, And then you've got Vladimir Putin trying to make the world safe for autocrats, and Donald Trump is now fully subscribed to that project. It is just a disaster that we're confronting, Tyrone. My hope is, and I always try to wrap this in the frame of this all goes back to Reagan. My hope is that people will increasingly realize that since 1980, and arguably since the 1920s, but on steroids way since the 1980s, the Republican Party has been the advocates for rich white men, period, full stop. And Americans, I think young people are figuring that out. I think a lot of Americans are figuring that out. Franklin Roosevelt had to deal with a hell of a lot of fallback from the 12 years of the three Republican administrations before him. Whoever follows Trump is going to have that same problem. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. Yeah. So I think FDR is the model for it, Tyrone. Tyrone, thanks a lot for the call. It's always nice hearing from you. I appreciate it. Thank you. 49 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. When I was a little kid, my grandmother had a piano and I loved to play it. I was incompetent, but I was figuring out all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of got away from it and, went to school and things got busy and just lost track of it. Well, now there's this fascinating new study out of the University of Geneva, Switzerland, that is making me think maybe I should go back and learn the piano. What they found was that they took a group of 132 healthy older adults, retired, 62 to 78 years old, Half of them learned the piano. Half of them took music classes without learning the piano. And what they found was that those who learned the piano actually had the strongest increase in their memory, in their mental competence, their mental faculties. Those who took the music classes also did well, but learning the piano was a huge step. So check it out. There's a whole long rant about this over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 9 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Dave in Earling. Is that Iowa?
Yep, that's Earling, Iowa.
Earling, Iowa. Hey, what's up, Dave?
Yep. Well, I'm a farmer here in Iowa, and the tariff decision that came down today from Supreme Court impacts farmers.
Sure.
First, the tariffs, caused our input prices to go up, caused our commodity prices to go down. And then Trump announced with much fanfare in December this bailout program of $12 billion that was to be funded by tariff money. And the question I've been calling around to, like, local farm service agency office, state office, national office, is what becomes of this program now that tariff money has kind of gone up in smoke? Poof.
Well, that's interesting.
And nobody seems to know.
My guess would... go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Well, there doesn't seem to be a plan B.
Yeah.
I called my congressman, Randy Feenstra, and a staffer there was in the dark.
Yeah.
Didn't know what was going on. And my local farm service agency office says that the sign-up is supposed to start on Monday.
To receive the funds?
Right. Trump was in Iowa here 3 weeks ago, and I was out there protesting him. Mm-hmm. But he announced to the crowd that was listening to him there that, the farmers are already getting their money, which was a lie. Mm-hmm. No farmer's gotten any bailout money yet. Sign-up doesn't start until Monday. Mm. And they say at my local farm service agency office that the sign-up is still going to start on Monday. But I said, well, you're asking farmers to come in and sign up for what is essentially now been deemed stolen money.
Yeah,
illegally obtained.
My guess on this, Dave, is that money is fungible. This is not this bailout that Trump wants to give was not appropriated by Congress, was not approved by Congress. It's basically Donald Trump just moving money from one pot to another by virtue of executive order, and which certainly could be challenged, but he does have a certain amount of discretion in that area. So my guess is that he's going to go ahead with this. He's going to have to, otherwise he's just going to devastate Republican chances in the Midwest, and he'll just figure out a different way to fund it if he can't fund it with tariff money. That said, I also am not certain that we're actually going to see tariff refunds and rebates. I mean, this is the basis of Brett Kavanaugh's dissent, was that this decision has just opened a can of worms. Who gets their money back? How do they get their money back? Does anybody get their money back? And as I mentioned earlier, you've got a 1933 law and you've got a 1974 law that both give the president limited but substantial tariff authority, particularly the Trade Act of 1933. And he could just say, okay, cool, we're not doing it under IEPA any longer, the International Emergency Powers Act. We're going to do it under, the Trade Act of 1933. And we're just shifting the rationale, and we're going to declare that all of these countries, he may have to whittle down the number of countries that he can apply tariffs to, but we'll simply declare that they are engaged in unfair trade. So I think that, I wouldn't panic yet, is the bottom line. My guess is they're going to figure out a way around this. We'll see.
Well, my connection's been kind of going in and out, so I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can, yeah.
But as far as I know, the USDA only has about $4 billion fungible dollars that aren't already assigned to other programs. So
I'm not sure that's the case. But
that's the figure I've been able to see.
We will find out in the next week or two, Dave. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So let's
up very fast. But,
let's stay in touch and keep talking.
You bet.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave. Henry in Jackson Heights, New York. Hey, Henry, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you so much for comparing what's going on now with Watergate. Not everybody talks about that much, and I appreciate that you did. Keep in mind, it takes a long time to remove, a ruler of a big country. It takes a long time.
Yeah, Watergate took 2.5 years.
Was like a perfect example. And I know you can talk about tariffs and you can talk about Epstein and all these other things that are, truly shameful and a problem for, him running the country. But my prediction of what will happen, and you saw Kristi Noem's second in command resign 2 days ago, and I'm sure she knows she's got some kind of smoking gun. Trump himself says locked and loaded all the time. Pam Bondi is like way, way, way inferior to John Mitchell. We're going to see Noem out really soon, and we're going to see, the pieces, the cooperators coming along.
Yeah.
Because
the rumor is that Noem wants to run for
Dean.
senator from South Dakota.
Yeah,
Challenge Mike Rounds.
You're completely right. And we're just going to see the dominoes fall, but it will take a long time. And
well, if she's going to challenge Mike Rounds, she's got 4 weeks to do it. She's got to get the almost 3,000 signatures to get on the primary ballot.
Well, these are very, very
by the
good
end of March.
points. But the problem here is that Watergate was just tapping, wiretapping an opponent.
Yeah.
This is about a homicide that is probably a murder. There's no such thing as absolute immunity. There's qualified immunity, but, even that,
I get it, Henry. Henry, I'm sorry we're out of time, but I get it. You're saying it very, very well. Thank you very much. We'll be back with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal taking your calls for the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Today is the Seven Mountains Mandate by Matthew Bodie, exposing the dangerous plan to Christianize America and destroy democracy. We'll start with the introduction, the story of the mountains. The plan to Christianize America began 50 years ago with a vision from God, or so the legend goes. Bill Bright, the founder of a college campus evangelism organization, had just landed in Colorado in August of 1975 to participate in an event in Boulder. But something planted deep in his spirit had made Bright desperate to talk to Lauren Cunningham, a founder of another youth-oriented evangelism organization who was on vacation in Colorado. The vision from God that Bright had brought for Cunningham was a typed list of 7 influential areas of culture. If Christians could win these 7 areas for Christ, Bright said, the nation could be set right and return to its biblical origins. It would take a massive spiritual war, but ending the demonic control of these areas would have immense impact for the kingdom of God. The vision from God that Bright had brought for the Constitution, the problem was that God had placed Cunningham on a mountaintop near Durango on the other side of the state with no way to communicate. The man who had picked up Bright at the airport said he could get the two together. Someone got through to a ranger station in Durango, and then from there, someone on horseback found Cunningham's remote location. That man took Cunningham to a borrowed plane, which flew Cunningham to meet the man who had the urgent message from God. What Bright didn't know was that God had given Cunningham the same list, though his was sketched out on a legal pad. The two friends presented their lists to each other simultaneously. Cunningham later wrote, "Amazing coincidences like this happen all the time when Christians listen to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit." Over the years, the story of that 1975 meeting has been told many ways, accepted not merely as gospel, but a divine endorsement of the list that Bright and Cunningham created. Whatever the truth of the meeting, the list has become powerful spiritual lore passed down from one generation to another in the movement born from it. That movement is intent on destroying democracy by taking dominion in these 7 institutions: education, family, religion, government, business, media, and entertainment. Over the decades, many have made their mark on the list by envisioning different labels for it. While Bright and Cunningham spoke of areas of influence, others have called them gates, pillars, channels, and most commonly among the movement's supporters today, mountains. The preferred metaphor evolved over time, but the purpose of the list has remained the same: bring the kingdom of God to America by conquering each of these cultural domains. The story of the 7 Mountains movement told in this book is the story of those who inspired and shaped that 1975 list. It's also about how the list has come to dominate American political life in the 21st century without most Americans even having heard about it. This insidious victory is the work of a new generation of believers who have pushed it with more and more aggression, pushing us closer and closer to violence, threatening our society through their claim to divine urgency. In short, this is the story of how the list became a mandate. The spiritual energy behind this mandate pushed the list into the White House with the 2016 election of Donald Trump. From there, the movement exploded beyond the fringes of charismatic evangelicalism into larger institutions, influencers, and financial backers. To the handful of experts who have followed the movement for years, it was no surprise its supporters turned violent when the 2020 election didn't go the way they wanted, the way they say God wanted. This is where the movement has been headed. Yet even more frightening, since the 2021 insurrection at the Capitol, more Americans seemingly want what the 7 Mountains movement wants also. A June 2023 survey of 2,000 Americans estimated about 30% are open to the ideas associated with the 7 Mountains movement, such as things like the U.S. culture is fundamentally Christian, and Christian values should be solely and explicitly endorsed by the government. Another 2023 survey found a similar percentage of Americans either adhering to or sympathetic to these ideals. A second Trump administration only reinforces that. Of course, many of the Americans in those polls are the demographic most supportive of the mandate, the evangelicals. A 2024 survey showed that strong majorities of evangelicals agree broadly with the goals of the 7 Mountain movement. About 55% of evangelicals specifically agreed that, quote, God wants Christians to stand atop the 7 mountains of society, end quote. The survey also showed that the percentage of Christian Americans who believe in the mandate increased from just under 30% to over 41% in just 1 year. The surveyors note that, quote, what not long ago seemed to be a marginal set of beliefs has become a dominant religious framework among American Christians, end quote. The 7 Mountains movement has been adopted across the religious right, even by leaders who may not share its theology, because their followers are being motivated by the mandate. For example, the 2022 National Day of Prayer Guide from the Southern Baptist Convention asks its congregants to pray for the 7 centers of influence. Beyond religion, the 7 Mountains movement has become so accepted in American society that it has supporters from all levels of government. The book, The 7 Mountains Mandate, Exposing the Dangerous Plan to Christianize America and Destroy Democracy, by Matthew Bodie.
We say fight back!
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the second hour of our program. On the line with us, Representative Pramila Jayapal, the former chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She represents Washington's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's on the House Judiciary, Foreign Affairs, Budget committees. Jayapal, Jayapal.house.gov, and Pramila Jayapal on Blue Sky. Representative Jayapal, thanks so much for being with us today. It's so nice to have you back, and I just have to tell you how blown away we all were by the way that you just revealed the moral, legal, and political rot of Pam Bondi, inviting her to acknowledge the victims who were standing behind her. Well done.
Thank you, Tom. And it's always good to be back with you. You know, that moment, I feel like it just ended the whole hearing because she showed who she was. I mean, she had this moment to turn around and apologize to them. To me, it was really important that I brought them into the room because I've been working so closely with them. And I think that they are, they have been so courageous and so brave. And when she refused to even turn around and acknowledge them, it just showed how small, how cruel, the rot, the depravity of the whole situation and her leadership of the Department of Justice. So I know that the survivors themselves felt both horrified, but also strong because we are all exposing how incredibly deep this stuff runs.
Well, this is the biggest cover-up since Watergate, in my opinion, and I think it's important to remember 20 people went to prison for Watergate, including 2 cabinet members. John Mitchell, the Attorney General, who held the job that Pam Bondi now has, went to prison for 19 months. He got an 8-year sentence and served 19 months of it. So I'm looking at that moment, and I think that was the pivotal moment in the hearings. I agree with you. And also, you know, the Supreme Court decision that we just had, and the revelations that hit the top of Drudge Report yesterday, that this 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, when Trump forced her to have oral sex, bit him and he beat her up. That was in the documents, and now we discovered that the 4 interviews the FBI did with her have just vanished. They're nowhere to be found, and then Andrew being arrested, you know, in the United Kingdom. I think that we are at or close to a kind of Watergate moment. I think the ground is shifting underneath the whole system. You know, Kristi Noem being, you know, with this flying palace airplane or bordello that she and her boyfriend, and they're both married to other people, flying around the country with 2 bedrooms and showers there. Now, Nixon didn't have 1,500 right-wing radio stations and 3 right-wing television networks and, you know, all that. He didn't have the firewall that Trump does. But how long do you think he can sustain this?
Well, I do feel like the earth is shaking. I mean, that's what one of the survivors advocates said to me, you know, is that the earth is shaking. And I think that the arrests around the world in the Epstein files, and then Trump's sort of juxtaposed against Trump's refusal to recognize that he is in those files. And I read those emails that you're talking about, by the way. They were there when I went last time. I'm going back on Monday. We'll see if I can find them again. But I think that combined with the break in the Supreme Court, combined with some Republicans in the House and a couple in the Senate also starting to break, there is this weight of corruption and cover-up that I think is exposing all of the cracks. And I don't know how long he can hold out because, listen, he has a lot of loyalty from everyone from Pam Bondi to, to all of the people around him, right? And he's got a lot of investment in people like Stephen Miller. But even those right-wing stations are breaking with him. Yeah. They certainly have broken with him on Epstein. And they don't want this cover-up. And I think if you look at the polling, even on immigration, there's so many issues across the board that we are starting to see those cracks. So let's see. I mean, I just think we have to be relentless in continuing to call for accountability and exposing the cover-up. I mean, the DOJ is spying on me. That's the other thing that came out in that hearing. Yeah. collecting information on members of Congress. Republicans don't like that. I've been in conversation with Mike Johnson, who publicly came out after talking to me and said that he thinks that's inappropriate. And so I don't know the timing, Tom, because honestly, I would have thought that Trump would have been done for some time ago. But he's got a lot of, he's got a lot of ways that he leverages his power, and we'll just have to see how that works. But I think that the American people, and not just Democrats, but independents for sure, and some Republicans are demanding something different.
Yeah, we look at Kristi Noem, for example, and now the rumors are that to avoid impeachment, if the Democrats take the House this fall, that she's got 5 weeks now to file the papers in South Dakota to run for the Senate and challenge Mike Rounds. That this is her way of weaseling out of it. I'm not sure it's loyalty. I think it's fear that is holding most of these people.
Fear. I think you're right. It's bullying. It's fear. God knows what what leverage he has. God knows what leverage other people, including Putin and others, have on Trump. That's
true.
Another story. But, But yes, it's a combination of fear, but also there are some people who are just never going to believe that there's anything wrong with him. I mean, I've been stunned at some of that.
No, I totally get that. But, this morning I got an email from the Pacific Legal Foundation. I'm sure you're familiar with them. It's a right-wing think tank. I think they're based out of Seattle. And they have been, on the wrong side of climate change and everything else forever, congratulating the Supreme Court on doing the right thing and restraining Donald Trump. I mean, the Pacific Legal Foundation, really? Are you kidding? So
that's a big one. I mean, the tariffs was interesting because, of course, it brought a lot of big corporations out against his tariff policy, right? So that there is this business aspect to it. But I think the way that the Supreme Court, and I haven't read the entire thing word for word, but, I think that it's very important, some of the things they said, because they are directly recognizing congressional authority for once. So I do think that that's important. And now, of course, the small businesses and consumers also who are saying, okay, well, what do we do about the refund money now, right? Like there's 183 billion or something that he's collected. How do we get that back? And I think it's going to be tough for consumers, but I do think there are probably some businesses who will be able to recover some of that. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just had a farmer call and say, we're supposed to get this $12 billion bailout, but it was supposed to be funded with tariff money. What's going on with that? My sense of it is that the timeline is going to be something like this, that sometime mid to late summer when the Republican primaries are largely over, you're going to see Republicans peeling away from Trump just left and right. And that after the November election, or after the new Congress is sworn in January, if the Democrats take either the House or Senate and launch impeachment investigations, whether he's impeached or not, just the investigations themselves will be shocking. I think maybe by next year you'll see Donald Trump saying, my health isn't as good as it used to be. I'm going to turn this over to JD or something like that. And then JD pardons him like Jerry Ford did. I don't know. What do you think? Does that make any sense? Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I mean, look, I think that even with, I was talking to Thomas Massie, and I know that when he was working to get Republicans on the Epstein discharge petition, one of the things he said, one of the arguments he said he was making is, listen, you are going to outlast this. He's saying this to his Republican colleagues. You're going to outlast Donald Trump. You may think Donald Trump's the person you have to pay attention to, but that guy is going to be gone and you're going to be left here. And so don't forget that you have to remember your longevity, if you will. Right. And I do think that that's becoming clearer and clearer. You could see it even with, things like 17 Republicans in the House breaking on the Affordable Care Act tax credit extension, right? Yeah. Because they realize that they can't go home and win their elections if they're voting against that, and that they have to show that they're trying to save healthcare for their constituents. So it's coming up in small ways, and I think that you will see Republicans peel off for sure in the run up to the primaries, even more than we're seeing now, and then you absolutely will see it next year. I myself have been reminding not only Republicans, but I was at the ICE detention center yesterday and they were refusing to let me in for oversight. And I said, listen, I'm going to be the chair of the immigration subcommittee if we win in November. And don't think that you all are not going to be held accountable for listening to your higher ups who are telling you to do illegal things instead of responding to congressional authority. So, we'll see, but we are a lot of accountability.
There you go. God bless you. Representative Pramila Jayapal, former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, now, of course, a member in fine standing, is with us for the hour taking your calls, a National Progressive Town Hall meeting. So I will butt out of here. I'll get out of the way, and we will start picking up calls in just a little bit here with Representative Jayapal. So please stick around 16 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann program. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann program.
Representative Pramila Jayapal with us for the hour in our National Progressive Town Hall meeting. We'll be right back with your calls for her. And welcome back. Alfredo in Mountain View, California. You are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Yeah, thank you for the forum, Tom. And thank you, Representative Jayapal, for all the great job you're doing. My question has to do with this Epstein debacle. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel from the FBI, they allocated over 1,000 agents to look for Trump's name on these Epstein files. To me, that's proof that this is a cover-up by the Department of Justice and the FBI. And what are your thoughts on this? And thank you.
Yeah, Alfredo, you're exactly right. I mean, and you're talking about, this is before the Epstein Files Transparency Act passed. Kash Patel and Pam Bondi last year went through and scrubbed a lot of the files of Trump's name. Because remember, Trump is the one who made the Epstein files a campaign issue because he thought it would politically benefit him. Pam Bondi, when she came in, was saying, I've got that client list on my desk, only to a couple of months later then say, oh, sorry, there's no client list at all, and then proceed to scrub the files of Trump's name. Now, his name is still in there, and there are a lot of things that are in those files. It's very difficult, by the way, to search them. It's much because there's millions of documents, and that's only half of what is supposed to have been released. There's still a lot missing. But I think it is a massive cover-up that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have overseen and are continuing to oversee. But I also think that the information is now coming out because it is in the files. And even though there are still some redacted pieces of information, you are starting to see investigations launched in the UK, in Norway. You are starting to see, again, these massive cracks form, and society is not standing for these people to, the people that are in these and the predators that are named in these files to not be brought to justice. So I don't know that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi continuing to cover up is going to do anything except show exactly what you're saying, that they're covering up. And so that's what we have on our side is the survivors and the strength of the survivors, and then also the strength of public opinion that this was depraved. And the more you see of these emails, and I've gone in and been with the redacted files, and I'm going again on Monday, it is so, there's just no words to describe the depravity, how sickening these jokes about pedophiles and raping young girls as young as 9 and 10, all the emails back and forth, the currying for power and privilege from people who have been at the top of academic institutions, governments, financial firms, law firms, all of them, both sides of the aisle. It is disgusting. And we are not going to stop until we bring them all down.
We just have 20 seconds to the break here. It seems that the cover-up is always worse than the crime. Are we seeing that?
Well, in this case, I don't know which is worse, Tom. I got to tell you, I've had nightmares reading these files, and it stretches back over different administrations. And it's remarkable to me. I mean, I think it really, the Epstein class, as it's being called, it's remarkable to me how people may have had power. They may have been in positions of power. Catherine Remler is an example, or Larry Summers, but they still wanted this taking the shackles off, being able to do what they wanted without regard to morality.
Yeah, no, I get it. We'll be right back. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out. 22 minutes past. Representative Pramila Jayapal is with us for the hour, taking your calls. Tom in Columbus, Ohio, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hey, Tom, I'm delighted to have you have Congresswoman Jayapal on, because she's the point of why I'm calling today. Everybody should be calling their Congress critters and their 2 senators, especially the Republicans, and say, no blanking war with Iran to cover up Epstein.
Yeah. Okay. Congresswoman. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
100%, Tom. 100%. And I think we will have a war powers resolution saying exactly that on the floor of the House. I hope we can vote on it this week because all the reports, seem to say that this is exactly what Trump is going to do. And we've known this. This is what he does. He goes to war with Venezuela. He threatens Greenland. He does all these illegal, unconstitutional things when he wants to distract from what's happening right here at home. So the war powers resolution, I think, is going to be introduced by Massey and Khanna. And hopefully we can vote on that. But listen, it's still going to take all Democrats plus a few Republicans in order to pass it in the House. And then the Senate, of course, gets even more difficult. There is some fear that if we don't pass it, that sort of gives more of a green light to Trump to go ahead. But this is just, the guy who said he was going to stop wars has now launched us into more unconstitutional, illegal wars in the very short 1 year that he's been in office than just about anyone I can imagine.
Yeah, what a joke. Terry in Valdez, Alaska, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
I want to talk about Democratic messaging. Donald Trump likes to yell from the rooftop, voter fraud. And the Democrats come back and they say, no, there is no voter fraud. Well, there was, and it was all perpetrated by Donald J. Trump. And this goes way back. The Al Gore, George Bush, that voter fraud gave us George W. Bush.
So, Terry, do you have a question for the Congresswoman?
The question is, no question, just a statement.
Okay, thank you very kindly. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Well, good morning. Representative, I understand you're still happily married, so I'll defer my second marriage proposal at this time. I think you're the best of the best. I really do. I love how you work for people. My statement in question is every Friday afternoon after work, I pick up an elderly couple. They're in their 80s, bring them to our weekly Friday protests out on the street, our No Kings protest. And every Friday we are assaulted by people driving pickup trucks that have their engines altered to produce giant clouds of toxic black smoke. What can we do about this situation to prevent ourselves from being assaulted?
Wow, that's a really tough question, because this is what a lot of the right-wing protesters are doing, even on highways. You know, there's a whole move to go behind electric vehicles with these spewing, smoke spewing vehicles. And I think that what you have to do is just continue to stay strong there. Don't let them think that they're going to scare you away. If you have a city government that can do anything to establish protection zones around you, that's obviously important, but you may not be in that situation. I think all of this is to say, we're not backing down. You know, there's a lot of things that are coming at us to force us to back down, from indictments of Democratic lawmakers to, to all the scare and intimidation tactics. And we just have to be really clear that you can spew whatever you want at us, but we ain't going away.
Yeah, and that is such a great message. Representative Pramila Jayapal, former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus representing the 7th District of Washington State in the U.S. House of Representatives, the hero of the Bondi hearings, will be back with us on the other side of this break here at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back in about 5 minutes with Representative Jayapal taking your questions in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting. So stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Jayapal.house.gov is her website. Pramila Jayapal on social media. We'll be right back with your calls for Representative Jayapal. Today we're reading from David Blight's book, Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom. This is from the introduction. In his speech at the dedication of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., September 24, 2016, President Barack Obama delivered what he termed a, quote, clear-eyed view of a tragic and triumphant history of black Americans in the United States. He spoke of a history that is central to the larger American story, one that is both contradictory and extraordinary. He likened the African American experience to the infinite depths of Shakespeare and Scripture. The, quote, embrace of truth as best we can know it, said the president, is, quote, where real patriotism lies. Naming some of the major pivots of the country's past, Obama wrapped up his central theme in a remarkable sentence about the Civil War era. Quote, we've buttoned up our Union blues to join the fight for our freedom. We've railed against injustice for decade upon decade, a lifetime of struggle and progress and enlightenment that we see etched in Frederick Douglass's mighty leonine gaze, end quote. How Americans react to Douglass's gaze, indeed how we gaze back at his visage, and more important, how we read him, appropriate him, or engage his legacies, informs how we use our past to determine who we are. Douglass's life and writing emerged from nearly the full scope of the 19th century, representative of the best and the worst in the American spirit. Douglass constantly probed the ironies of America's contradictions over slavery and race. Few Americans use Shakespeare and the Bible to comprehend his story and that of his people as much as Douglass. And there may be no better example of an American radical patriot than the slave who became a lyrical prophet of freedom, natural rights, and human equality. Obama channeled Douglass in his dedication speech, knowingly or not. So do many people today. Born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, a slave, in Talbot County, Maryland, in February 1818, the future Frederick Douglass was the son of Harriet Bailey, one of 5 daughters of Betsy Bailey, and with some likelihood his mother's white owner. He saw his mother for the last time in 1825, though he hardly knew her. She died the following year. Douglass lived 20 years as a slave and nearly 9 years as a fugitive slave subject to recapture. From the 1840s to his death in 1895, he attained international fame as an abolitionist, editor, orator of almost unparalleled signature, and the author of 3 autobiographies that are classics of the genre.
As a public man, he began his abolitionist career 2 decades before America would divide and fight a civil war over slavery that he openly welcomed. Douglas was born in a backwater of the slave society of the South, just as steamboats appeared in bays and on American rivers, and before the telegraph, the railroad, and the rotary press changed human mobility and consciousness. He died after the emergence of electric lights, the telephone, and the invention of the phonograph. The renewed orator and traveler loved and used most of these elements of modernity and technology. Douglas was the most photographed American of the 19th century, explained in this book, and especially by the intrepid research of 3 other scholars I write upon. Although it can never really be measured, he may also have been, along with Mark Twain, the most widely traveled American public figure of his century. By the 1890s, in sheer miles and countless number of speeches, he had few rivals as a lecturer in the golden age of oratory. It is likely that more Americans heard Frederick Douglass speak than any other public figure of his time. Indeed, to see or hear Douglass became a kind of wonder of the American world. He struggled as well with the pleasures and perils of fame as much as anyone else in his century, with the possible exceptions of General Ulysses S. Grant or P.T. Barnum. Douglass's dilemma with fame was a matter of decades, not merely of moments, and fraught with racism. The orator and writer lived to see and interpret black emancipation, to work actively for women's rights long before they were achieved, to realize the civil rights triumphs and tragedies of Reconstruction, and to witness and contribute to America's economic and international expansion in the Gilded Age. He lived to the age of lynching and Jim Crow laws, when America collapsed into retreat from the real victories and revolutions in race relations that he had helped to win. He played a pivotal role in America's second founding out of the apocalypse of the Civil War, and he very much wished to see himself as a founder and defender of the Second American Republic. In one lifetime of anti-slavery, literary, and political activism, Douglass was many things, and the set of apparent paradoxes makes his story so attractive to biographers, as well as to so many constituencies today. He was a radical thinker and a proponent of classic 19th century political liberalism. At different times, he hated and loved his country. He was a ferocious critic of the United States and all its hypocrisies, but also, after emancipation, became a government bureaucrat, a diplomat, and a voice for territorial expansion. He strongly believed in self-reliance and demanded an activist interventionist government at all levels to free slaves, defeat the Confederacy, and to protect black citizens against terror and discrimination. Douglass was a serious constitutional thinker, and few Americans have ever analyzed race with more poignancy and nuance than this mostly self-taught genius with words. He was a radical editor, writer, and activist. The book Frederick Douglass by David Blight.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour. Ken in Lafayette, Colorado. You are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Good morning. Thanks, Tom, for taking my call. And thank you, Representative Jayapal, for coming on Tom's shows. Between you, Mr. Pocan, and Mr. Khan, it's refreshing that we've got some real representation, and it's much appreciated. So my question, Representative, is regarding ICE agents. And since we can't seem to arrest ICE agents for murder committed in broad daylight in front of numerous witnesses and on film, okay, since we can't seem to arrest them for murder, can we arrest ICE agents for speeding? And that's a serious question. So ICE is targeting the residential neighborhoods, and I'm sure Minnesota has laws on the books that designate the speed limit in a residential neighborhood as 25, 35 miles an hour. Okay, so these goons are racing through neighborhoods at 60, 70 miles an hour. I don't know. To go to somebody's house.
They've caused multiple crashes. Ken, let's get the answer to the question. Thank you.
Yeah. So look, I don't think it is absolutely off the table, and I talked to Keith Ellison about this as well, the Attorney General in Minnesota, that ICE agents can be held accountable for murdering people. However, we do need to clarify that law and make it absolutely clear that there are no limitations to doing that. And so that is one of the demands that we have right now in our, our quest around not funding DHS until there are significant reforms. I think that there are many ways we can hold these ICE agents accountable. And so I think that states are looking at this. I know my state is looking at different laws that we can pass here. And whether it's speeding or whether it's murder, the reality is that these agencies should not exist. They are absolutely lawless. They have no accountability, way too much money. And people forget, Tom, that these agencies were only set up in the post-Patriot Act era, right? Right after 9/11, that's when DHS was created. That's when ICE was created. Immigration is a civil system. Before that, immigration enforcement was actually within the Department of Justice. And it was mostly about services, but then enforcement was administrative because that's actually what the immigration system is. So this is all a construction that is relatively recent. We need to deconstruct it, and we have to completely dismantle ICE, CBP, and DHS. I mean, why is FEMA in DHS? FEMA was an agency set up by President Carter in 1976 as an independent agency because it was not supposed to be politicized. And now it's thrown in with all these other agencies that are essentially allowing us to militarize the federal government against its own residents.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, the word homeland personally offends me. Rudolf Hess introduced that word in the 1937 Munich or Nuremberg rally when he said, thanks to Hitler, Germany has become a homeland for all Germans all around the world. And they stopped using the word fatherland and started using the word Heimat, which is homeland in German. It became the word that the Zionist movement used also, which I don't have a problem with. But the point is that in both cases, it was our nation is based on our ethnicity. And America is not based on ethnicity. The word homeland was just an insane choice by the Bush administration. If I'm, pardon my editorializing, but
totally agree with you.
Kathy in Manteca, California. Am I saying it right, Kathy?
No, it's Manteca.
Okay, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. Thank you for taking my. First, I've just got to say something real quick and then give you a couple pointers. I'm a Democrat, so I want to know what you're planning for the State of the Union, what the Democrats are, and have you thought about having the Epstein survivors there as guests with Trump knowing that they're there and doing a little more than paddles? That was kind of, to me, it was a little embarrassing. And then also the need to disrupt and yell, "You lie," whenever he tells a lie. So that'll take all night, and it'll probably use up all the Democrats there in the chamber. What are your thoughts and what are your plans? And maybe even just a total boycott of all Democrats attending.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I'm not attending. I don't need to sit there and listen to his lies. I just think it's really not worthwhile at all. And so I'm not attending, but I am taking as my guest an Epstein survivor from my district, and she will attend. She can attend without my being there. They sit up in the gallery. There's a number of them that are going to sit together. And I think it's going to be very powerful for him to have to look at them, and for the news media to have to show them there exhibiting their bravery. There is an alternative State of the Union that Move On and Indivisible and a number of other groups are putting on. And I am going to that. And I will also have a representative of the Epstein survivors and the advocacy organization that is helping them at that with me to speak. So that's a big rally outside the Capitol grounds. I think it's at around 8:30 Eastern time, so sort of the same time that Donald Trump will be speaking. So those are our plans, and I think it should be, I think it'll be a very important message, both to have the Epstein survivors within the chamber, but also to have a number of us saying, no, we're not going to sit there and listen to his lies. And hopefully the news media will do a better job of, calling out those lies as they're being told. I understand that people have to cover that State of the Union, but there should be a real-time tracking of the lie that's being told, not after he's done, but in the moment, right there up on the screen, parallel with what he's saying, so that everybody sees that.
That would be great. Jan, in Etna Green, Indiana, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hello, Representative Jayapal. It's an honor to speak with you. I'm a great admirer of you and the squad. Tom had mentioned earlier in his first hour that he felt that Democratic Socialists were a threat to the Democratic Party. As an FDR Democrat, I say it's the other way around, that the current Democratic milquetoast party is a threat to the real Democratic Party. Your thoughts, please. Have a good day.
Yeah, just to clarify what I said.
I was surprised that,
when the head of the Green Party, I'm forgetting her name, Jill Stein, when Jill Stein started campaigning, when Donald Trump won in every state that he won in, this is back in 2016, every state that he won in, the Greens pulled more votes in that state than his margin of victory. Ralph Nader did the same thing in 2000 down in Florida. In the 2004 election, the Green Party candidate, David, I'm forgetting his last name, who's been on this program a number of times, specifically asked people in swing states not to vote for the Greens, but instead to vote for the Democrats. Up until this last year, the Democratic Socialists had only been active in the states that had fusion voting, like New York, where you could be on the ballot, like with Zoran, and not pull away from the Democratic Party. Now that this fellow has taken over the Democratic Socialists, they have proclaimed that they are going to be in 20 states for the 28 election. And they will be pulling votes away from the Democratic nominee by doing that. And I think that's a huge mistake. So I toss it to you.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the challenge with our two-party system. It is very difficult to run and win as an independent candidate or a third party. And if I had my druthers, Tom, I would have a multi-party system, because I think it's much, much, much better. As it is, I think Working Families Party and some of the fusion voting pieces have been, important as a way to showcase that. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is elect really bold Democrats and pull Democrats over to represent working people, instead of always having a handout. Too many Democrats have a handout to the big businesses, to trying to get money into elections. That's a whole nother problem that we often talk about on the show. But I do think that we need more than milquetoast Democrats. I agree with that sentiment.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that, vote blue no matter who is always the right thing, particularly in primaries. I mean, this is where we have a real opportunity. And a lot of people don't pay attention to primaries in blue districts. Well, you should, because it actually matters what kind of a Democrat we have. And we are fighting very hard. I'm still the co-chair of the CPC PAC, our political arm of the Progressive Caucus. And it is really important to us that we not only look at electing populist progressives in swing districts, which we have always done. It is not true that progressives only win in blue districts. That's just never been the case. We've always had about a dozen people that come from very populist red districts and still win on progressive ideas. But we also are focusing on blue districts where it actually matters, and there is a real differentiation between a Democrat who is willing to stand up to those big corporate interests, who is willing to be bold, who is not just looking at, tiny incremental change, but actually looking at how to fundamentally flip systems so that they work for working people and poor people. And so I do think that for people who care about this, pay attention to those blue state primaries. Yeah. Look at who's running, and let's make sure that we are electing bold progressives who will stand up and who will help shift the party. And then, let's keep working towards a multi-party system, because I definitely think that is the way to go for the longer term.
Amen. I completely agree. Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
46 minutes past the hour. Representative Jayapal with us for the hour, taking your calls in a National Progressive Town Hall meeting. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Ike in Charleston, South Carolina. You're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Yeah, hey, just for the fellow that called that's getting assaulted by those trucks real quick. I'm in the state of South Carolina. We've got a state law that says that if they modify their exhaust to do things like that, or to be loud and to backfire, any adjustment of their exhaust is illegal. So what you need to do is you need to get pictures and video of them, get their tags, turn them in, and also make sure you contact your city council, the mayors, the ombudsman, and the chief of police, and you tell them that that's defective equipment and you want them taken off the road. And that's probably a state law wherever you're at in this country. You can't modify your engine like that. You can't modify your exhaust. So give it a shot.
Thank you, Ike. And your question for Representative?
Yeah, my question is this, Representative. I don't understand something. When it comes to this Epstein stuff, now I've been down the rabbit hole, and I looked and I saw where after he died, the executor of the will handed out money to this person and that person and this person, that. Well, basically what's been said is that the victims of Jeffrey Epstein have been compensated in a lot of cases. Now, my question is, the thing that's got me messed up here is how in the hell can you be a victim if you were never adjudicated? And if you are a victim and they're using the legal term that you're a victim, where's the proof and where's the adjudication and where's the judgment? I don't understand how they can be a victim and it hadn't even gone to court.
Well, this is complicated because this is a massive scheme, and there are thousands, I believe, victims, people who were trafficked, who were raped, who were sexually abused by Epstein or any one of the predators and pedophiles in the ring. Some of those people came forward and filed lawsuits, and in some cases, maybe there were some settlements without adjudication. In some cases, maybe with adjudication. But I can promise you that the vast majority have received nothing. And I don't think the vast majority are actually in this for money. I think they are in it for accountability. The trauma and the ruining of lives that these victims have gone through, these survivors have gone through, is really important for everyone to understand. And, even just standing up now, those survivors that were in the room with Pam Bondi that I've been working so closely with over the last many months and just been so inspired by, they are not doing this even for themselves in many cases. Yes, they want closure, no question about that. They want these people to be brought to accountability, to justice, that raped them or assaulted them. But they are also doing this for their children. They are doing this for other survivors, because what happens if you have this massive global sex trafficking ring where multiple administrations over time, I mean, this stretches back 30 years. Maria Farmer first gave her testimony in 1996. And so this goes back a long way. And in those files, there are Jane Does, people whose identities have been kept secret for 30 years, that Pam Bondi and her Department of Justice exposed by not redacting their names when they released those files. Some of those survivors are having to tell their families for the first time that they were victims.
We'll be back in just 1 minute. I've got to read an ad over on the commercial side, and we'll have a promo here on this side. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Wrong, I don't have to read an ad. Okay, we're back with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Greg in Hood River, Oregon, you're on the air.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you, Representative, for holding Bondi's feet to the fire. That was excellent. Please keep it up. You answered part of my question about the SAVE Act, but it looks like it's another voter suppression attempt by Republicans. How are Democrats going to fight this sort of thing?
Yeah, most definitely. The SAVE Act passed on the House floor last week with only Republican votes, I believe that's the case. And it is absolutely a voter suppression act. It is part of Trump's call to, quote, nationalize elections, which is unconstitutional. And the way they do it is by instituting all kinds of restrictions on voting, right? So it says that you have to have either a birth certificate or a passport. 50% of Americans don't have passports. If you're a woman who changed your name when you got married, it means your birth certificate is not in the same name as your driver's license or your voting records. So this is like a broad scale attempt to just completely disenfranchise a whole bunch of voters. And they are also, of course, asking DHS to get voting records in exchange for not having ICE and CBP surge agents in Minnesota and in other places. So I don't think this will pass. The only good news here is I don't think this will pass the Senate. Lisa Murkowski has already said she's not for it. I think other Republicans will pull away, and it's not going to get passed. But the voter suppression efforts are real, and we're addressing those through court cases, challenging those in states where they're trying to file voter suppression laws. We're addressing it by beefing up our state's voter integrity in places where we do control voting, where we have Democrats in office or responsible Republicans. And then we are going to have to make sure that everyone turns out to vote and that we don't allow people to be scared off into thinking that somehow their vote doesn't count. That's really the way that we defeat this, is by big turnout that makes it absolutely impossible for them to be successful in suppressing the vote.
Chris in Hampton, Iowa, you are on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Yes, it's Chris. And I would like to ask her a question if she would like to run for president, being she's very well liked.
Well, thank you, Chris. But I was not born in the United States, so I am constitutionally prohibited from running for president. Though I suppose in this administration, they're doing all kinds of things that are constitutionally prohibited. Maybe I should just run just to challenge it. But no, I'm not running for president.
I would vote for you. Laura in Denver, Colorado, you're on the air with Representative Jayapal.
Hola from Colorado. I love that response. And thank you, Representative Jayapal, for all your work and all that we have endured as women globally. My question is, even though you won't be attending, can you or will you respond and share our request to have signs and placards at the State of the Union speech on Tuesday, the 24th? Signs or placards that say Epstein? Because this would be on behalf of half of the survivors, and we ask because we've been lobbying and calling and writing our Colorado delegation for these past 2 weeks.
Thank you.
They do not allow signs on the floor, and so this is just the way it is. When we did those paddles, we had to sneak them onto the floor. And I will say that with AI these days, people were changing what was on the paddles. I know some people didn't like that idea at all. I have mixed feelings about it, but I think that the most powerful sign is the Epstein survivors themselves, and they will be right there in the gallery. And it will be impossible for Donald Trump to ignore them because the media will be focused on them. My guest, as I said, is a survivor. We will make sure they get in front of the cameras. We will make sure that they are at the rally, their voice is present at the rally for the alternative State of the Union. That is the most powerful sign, Laura, I think that we can possibly have.
So in the final 40 seconds that we have here, Representative Jayapal, any closing thoughts or suggestions for people?
Well, I think the most important thing is to just stay focused. We were talking about all the breaks, about the earth shaking, about all the cracks that are emerging. This is the moment for us to dig in and to not be hopeless, not be powerless, because those are tools of the oppressor. That's exactly what Trump wants, is for people to feel hopeless. And the best antidote to hopelessness and powerlessness is action. And there are so many ways to take action, from the rallies. We're doing our next Resistance Lab curriculum is coming up, resistancelab.us, and we're actually talking about economic boycotts and strikes and how we get to a place where we utilize that kind of economic power against this administration. So sign up for that. But there's millions of ways to be vocal, to write letters, and of course, Tom's show is just such a fantastic boon for all of us
bless you.
who want to get educated.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for being with us today and for the great work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Great having you with us. Representative Pramila Jayapal.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Cokeland, The Secret History of Coke Industries and Corporate Power in America by Christopher Leonard. This is from the preface. On May 18th, 1981, 4 Wall Street bankers traveled to Wichita, Kansas. They went there to make an offer to Charles Koch, the CEO of an obscure mid-size energy company. The bankers from Morgan Stanley wanted to convince Koch to take his family's company public, offering shares for sale on the New York Stock Exchange. Their deal was squarely in line with the conventional wisdom of corporate America at the time. Going public was seen as a natural progression for companies like Koch Industries, offering them access to big pools of money and promising enormous paydays for the existing team of executives. All it required from the CEO was to surrender control. Morgan Stanley, in return, would collect a small fortune in fees. Charles Koch was 45 years old. He had run Koch Industries since he was 32 when his father died suddenly. He was trim, tall, and had an athlete's build. He spoke quietly in meetings and seemed almost passive. The bankers laid out their plan to take Koch public. They revealed what, to most executives at least, might have been the most significant detail. If Charles Koch agreed to the deal, he could earn $20 million overnight. The bankers seemed incredulous when they prepared a confidential memo about Koch's reaction. He does not want this cash, the memo reported. Charles Koch calmly explained to them why their offer made no sense. His company was breathtakingly profitable. It operated in vital, deeply complex corners of the American energy industry.
During the 1980s, Koch Industries was the largest purchaser and transporter of U.S. crude oil. It owned an oil refinery. It employed teams of commodity traders who bought and sold a wildly diverse menu of raw materials and financial products, from gasoline to paper futures contracts. This might have encouraged most CEOs to take their company public. Koch Industries, however, did not want outsiders to know how much money its traders were earning. Taking the company public would expose too many of its secrets. The memo said, certain of Koch's commodity traders are particularly worried that their high salaries, once disclosed to the public, would be used against them by their trading partners. Secrecy was a strategic necessity for Koch Industries. Charles Koch did not want to surrender it. He also didn't want to surrender control. He had a specific, clear vision of how to run his company, and he didn't need Wall Street investors to interfere. If the bankers expected Charles Koch to go along with the conventional wisdom of their time, then they, like so many outsiders, did not understand him. Beneath his low-key veneer, Charles Koch was, at his core, a fighter. He had unmovable ideas about how things should be, and he did not back down when challenged. When he was challenged by his own brothers for control of Koch Industries, he fought them in a bitter legal battle that lasted decades. When he was challenged by members of a powerful labor union during his first years as CEO, he fought them even as they committed an act of industrial sabotage that nearly destroyed Koch's oil refinery. When the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice launched a criminal investigation into Koch Industries' oil gathering business, Charles Koch fought them with every legal and political tool at his disposal. When a liberal Congress and President Barack Obama sought to impose regulations on the fossil fuel industry to control greenhouse gas emissions, Charles Koch fought them in ways that changed U.S. politics. In each of these fights, Charles Koch prevailed. When Charles Koch dismissed the bankers in 1981, it was just a small skirmish in the larger war to control Koch Industries. After prevailing in that fight, he created a company that was true to his vision. He avoided the snares that entangled many publicly traded companies that report their financial results to investors every 3 months. Koch Industries didn't have to think quarter to quarter. The company thinks year to year. An internal think tank and deal-making committee called the Development Group will sometimes think through a business deal on a timeline measured in decades. This long-term view made Koch more nimble where other companies stumbled. In 2003, for example, Koch Industries bought a group of money-losing fertilizer plants when no publicly traded company was willing to take the risk. Today, those plants are as profitable as a broken ATM machine that spews out cash around the clock. Unlike publicly traded companies, Koch Industries does not pay out rich dividends to investors. Charles Koch insists on reinvesting at least 90% of the company's profits, fueling its constant expansion. This strategy laid the foundation for decades of continuous growth. Koch Industries expanded continuously by purchasing other companies and branching out into new industries. It specialized in the kind of businesses that are indispensable to modern civilization, but which most consumers never directly encounter. The company is embedded in the hidden infrastructure of everyday life. Millions of people use Koch's products without ever seeing Koch's name attached. Koch refines and distributes fossil fuels, from gasoline to jet fuel, on which the global economy is dependent. Koch is the world's third largest producer of nitrogen fertilizer, which is the cornerstone of our modern food system. Koch makes the synthetic materials used in baby diapers, waistbands, and carpets. It makes the chemicals used for plastic bottles and pipes. It owns Georgia Pacific, which makes the wall panels, beams, and plywood required to build homes and office buildings. It makes napkins, paper towels, stationery, newspaper, and personal hygiene products. Koch Industries owns a network of commodities trading offices in Houston, Moscow, Geneva, and elsewhere, which are the circulatory system of modern finance. The book, Kochland, by Christopher Leonard.
We say fight back!
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Donald Trump just gave a performance, I suppose, in which he was talking about how we've got very powerful, things that we can use to impose tariffs. We don't have to do it under IEEPA. Here's the story. Initially, well, not just initially, throughout this last year, all of these tariffs that Trump has been imposing, he's been using the authority that he claims he has through this basically International Emergency Act that says, in a state of emergency, the president can do certain things. And now the act does not mention tariffs among those things that he can do. And so that's why the Supreme Court said, sorry, you can't do these tariffs under this law. But as I mentioned in the first hour of the program, there are several other laws. There's at least two that I'm sure of and a third that I think is probable that Congress has passed, going all the way back to 1930, that give the president the authority to impose tariffs under specific conditions. So basically Trump's speech was, screw you, Supreme Court. Thank you, Brett Kavanaugh, for saying wonderful things. And I'm going to go ahead with tariffs anyway. And, we all know number one, he's going to do it. Number two, even if it's illegal, he's going to do it and just say, okay, let's take another year for this thing to go to the Supreme Court all over again. So I frankly am very skeptical that anything is going to change. But, we'll see. They're going to figure out a way to do their song and dance. Meanwhile, this story is just getting bigger and bigger about this young woman who has claimed that Roger Sullenberger is the reporter who broke this story, and it is all over. I mean, it was on Drudge yesterday. I don't know if it is right now. I haven't checked this morning, but he, number one, found that this reference in the 3 million document release from a couple of weeks ago that referenced this young woman who was between 13 and 15 years old at the time, who claimed that Donald Trump forced her to have oral sex with him, to perform oral sex on him, and that when she did, she bit him, and he was so angry about it that he beat her up and kicked her out of the car that they were in, and threw her out of the car that they were in. She was interviewed as an adult in 2019. In fact, in July and August of 2019, 4 times by the FBI. They apparently took this very, very seriously. And there's a reference to this in the documents that were released, but the interviews are completely missing. There is a list of the interviews, but they're missing. And to make the plot even thicker, it turns out that these interviews were given to Ghislaine Maxwell when she was being prosecuted. Now, here's why. This woman's testimony was taken so seriously by the FBI and by the Department of Justice that when Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted for her crimes against children in collaboration with Jeffrey Epstein, they used her testimony. So her, I believe it's the Sixth Amendment says that you have the right to see the evidence that's being presented against you. So her lawyers were given, and she was given all of this testimony. And now people are speculating that this is the blackmail that Ghislaine Maxwell has been using to get herself out of a nasty prison and into this puppy training country club where she's staying right now, where the doors are not even locked, right? I mean, it's like a dormitory. It's like a women's sorority, and she trains puppies and has gourmet meals brought to her, and I mean it's just wild stuff. And he has published the documents themselves, and so this is getting very interesting. I don't know where it's going to go beyond this, but I think this is fascinating. The other story I wanted to bring to your attention, then I'll pick up your calls for Anything Goes Weekend here, is about Bob Kennedy. Back when Bob was a lawyer and making money suing bad guys, he sued Monsanto. He sued Monsanto because of their herbicide Roundup, which contains it's basically a chemical called glyphosate, and he won. His claim, he was suing on behalf of a guy who got cancer, and there's a form of lymphoma or leukemia, I believe it's lymphoma, that is associated with this chemical. And Bayer has already paid out something like $10 billion in payments to people whose family members got sick and died from exposure to glyphosate, to Roundup. And when Bob Kennedy sued, he won a $290 million judgment against Monsanto because his client got cancer from Roundup. So, you know, he knows about this, right? So earlier this week, the pesticide industry went to Trump. Well, it wasn't earlier this week that they did it, but this was when Trump finally responded. The pesticide industry apparently went to Trump or people in his administration and said, you know, let us, and now this is speculation, okay? Let me just lay this out. I am speculating. And it crossed their palms with lots and lots of cash, as lobbyists are wont to do. And in exchange for that, or in response to that, or something, Wednesday night, day before yesterday, Donald Trump signed an executive order invoking the Defense Production Act. Now, the Defense Production Act goes back to World War II, and it gives the president the power to force a factory to stay open, to produce war materials because we are in a state of emergency, because we're in a war. So Trump invoked the Defense Production Act to require more glyphosate to be made. Let that sink in for a minute. I mean, this is just mind-boggling. And Bob Kennedy came out today and said, good on him, bravo. He said, and I quote, Donald Trump's executive order puts America first where it matters most, our defense readiness and our food supply. We must safeguard America's national security first. By expanding domestic production, we close that gap and protect American families. Now, this has got the MAHA people, the Make America Healthy Again people, just, you know, like chewing off their arms, you know, like a coyote caught in a trap or something. I mean, they're just freaking out. This is Kelly Ryerson, a prominent MAHA activist known as the Glyphosate Girl, made a post on X saying, just as the large MAHA base begins to consider what to do at midterms, the president issues an executive order to expand domestic glyphosate production, the very same carcinogenic pesticide that MAHA cares about most. Can you spell backfire? Ken Cook, president of the Environmental Working Group, he says, I can't envision a bigger middle finger to every MAHA mom than this. He goes on to say, elevating glyphosate to a national security priority is the exact opposite of what MAHA voters were promised. If Secretary Kennedy remains at HHS after this, it will be impossible to argue that his past warnings about glyphosate were anything more than campaign rhetoric designed to win trust and votes. And Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and said Donald Trump just signed, quote, an EO, an executive order protecting cancer causing glyphosate in our foods. But and here's where it gets, this is the fracturing that's happening in the Republican Party. This is when the corruption gets too heavy, becomes too heavy a load to bear. The Republican Agriculture Committee members in the House of Representatives have their own Twitter account. And they posted just a few minutes ago, just shortly, a little bit ago, thank you, President Trump, for acknowledging the importance of glyphosate-based herbicides in American agriculture. This is a vital step forward in ensuring a domestic supply of this critical crop input remains available for our producers. And of course, you know, anybody on the Agricultural Committee has got to be taking money from Monsanto, right? I mean, come on, any Republican. So on it goes. The corruption just never ends. And now they're they must feel quite confident, for Bob Kennedy and Trump to go out there and say, yeah, more poison in the American food supply. That's a good thing. Just keep bringing the money, boys. Keep bringing the money. So anyhow, what say you? I'll pick up your calls right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
15 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls in just a minute. And welcome back. Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger, what's up?
Well, on Anything Goes Friday, since I didn't get a chance to talk to my representative, could I talk about two subjects real quick?
I'll give you a minute and a half. How's that? You can fill it however you want.
I thought you gave people 2 minutes since anything goes.
Yeah, it depends on
I
where
can
we are
probably
in the
do
show.
it in 30 seconds.
Okay, go for it.
Thanks for talking about advocating for speech, and especially Lappe books. I really like them. However, KBCS, during one of your YouTube ad breaks, talked about the Kevin Bacon separation, and I have a 1-degree separation with Pramila and all the Washington delegation. But anyway, since it's a college, KBCS, how about suggestions for people when they graduate from an undergraduate school? Do they look for MPAs from Syracuse, which is, by the way, called the Orangemen, which is kind of, I've mentioned that in some of my letters to the Congress people, and USC and or American University, where I got my MPA, because you're able to take law courses there without being a lawyer, and you get chance to argue either side from the same set of facts. So this new quote-unquote, knowledge that the judges are not umpires, as Roberts claimed at his hearing, is not a new thing. Any lawyer knows that.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a student and work in the legislature, then public policy works. But if you're going to be a volunteer or an employee of a nonprofit or governmental agency, go for an MPA.
There you go. Okay, Roger, thank you very much. Janice in Bellevue, Washington. Hey, Janice, what's up?
Yes, I've been waiting for 30 years for the Democrats to come up with a bill that will undo the terrible 1996 Telecom Act that
Me too.
Went back to monopolies, and Clinton had the lamest excuses for signing it of anything. He sounded like a second grader, But anyway, I would just like to tell all your listeners, please ask your representatives to do something about writing a new act that will stop this terrible monopoly of media. And I also, since it was 30 years ago, we have all these social media things and Twitter and all that. But they should wrap it all into the same thing. I don't see why they couldn't.
Wrap what all into what same thing?
Well, telecommunications was
I see. Undoing the 96 Telecom Act. Yeah.
So they need to update it.
Yeah, I agree. And they also need to blow away Section 270 that allowed Mark Zuckerberg to become a super billionaire. They need to reimpose liability on social media sites, an area that I have a lot of knowledge of. We used to run forums for CompuServe. So, Janice, thank you.
Yes.
Well said.
All of that needs to be redone pronto.
Amen. I'm with you, Janice. Well said. Thank you very much. I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. In 60 seconds, stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. People in the Rust Belt states know all about tariffs. They know that tariffs kept jobs in the Rust Belt states for centuries, literally, that America was built on tariffs. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump got elected in 2016 was because he talked about tariffs. But for some reason right now, you know, the Harris-Walz campaign, or Democrats in general, are reluctant to talk about tariffs. They call them sales taxes or something like that. They really need to be a little more straightforward, because people, particularly in the industrial Midwest, or in the Rust Belt, as we call it now, are not dumb. You know, they know what's going on. They know where we've been and how we got here. And I think it's pretty important to be talking about tariffs and what they are, how they work, and how they can bring manufacturing back home. I wrote a piece about it for Hartmann Report. It's titled, "Why Trump is Wrong and Alexander Hamilton Was Right About Tariffs." And I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. 21 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here on Anything Goes Weekend. Hey, Larry. Larry in Los Angeles. How's everything? What's up?
Well, I wanted to point out to a lot of people that one of the reasons why the Epstein files didn't get talked about much when Democrats were president is because the FBI is in the hands of the Republicans this entire time, all the way going back to before Clinton was president. So they know what's in the files. They've always known what was in the files. And it never gets talked about when a Democratic president is president, because he doesn't get involved with trying to prosecute people.
Right.
The way Donald Trump, this is a new thing, what Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to make a prediction, just to emphasize that the Federal Reserve is corrupt. When Pam Bundy did her little thing, the Dow hit 50,000, then it dropped back down. Guess what's going to happen on Tuesday at the end of the market day? I'm predicting it's going to hit 50,000 again, so Donald Trump can get up there with his chest all stuck out and boast about how he's doing so great because the Dow hit 50,000. If they did it for Pam Bundy, and I think they did, they will do it for Donald Trump. Even after I say this, they will still be tempted to do it.
Is the they you're talking about the Fed?
Powell, yes.
Powell.
Yes, the Fed. The corrupt Fed. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we have a corrupt FBI that's always in the hands of the Republicans. We have a corrupt Fed for most of this time, also has been in the hands of the Republicans, and now they got the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well, it seems that the Supreme Court is kind of slowly backing away, but I can't disagree with your analysis, Larry. It's always great hearing from you. Go ahead.
You look at what happened with the markets now. The Supreme Court knows more about our economy than Donald Trump.
It's true.
This didn't hurt Donald Trump. It helped him, because they're saying this guy's such a fool, he's going to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah. Well, he is. He has been. I mean, we still have 3% inflation. We still have a weak job market. At 3% inflation, I think the value of your money drops in half in, 12 years, 10 years, something like that?
All I know is gold is on the rise again. That's one thing that they don't really have that much control.
Yeah, and the dollar's down 9% since Trump came into office. The whole world is saying, no, we don't want your dollars. Larry, thank you very much. Spot on.
It was near 19% up when Biden was president.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Good talking to you, Larry. Thank you. James in Hollywood. Hey, James, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Still the smartest man in all media. Pramila, I was going to tell her she deserves an Emmy Award for that performance.
Yeah.
Just that look on...
Or a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, when they got the shot of her face and the woman standing behind her, it was just precious. And she would not look to her right the whole time.
Yeah.
She didn't want to see him. But
sort of like, vampires being afraid to step into the sunlight.
That's good. Anyhow, I was, you know how important this election is. You probably understand that if we don't win the House back, it'll be full-blown fascism by the end of his term.
Yep.
And the one thing I don't understand, I think Atlanta should sue the FBI, should go after him, charge him with a felony. They had no right to come and they have nothing to do with elections. They're run by state as it states in the Constitution. I don't see even Kristi Noem is now interjecting herself. Oh, we're going to come check your voting rolls. What? I don't understand and what we can do about it. I mean, the only thing
we can show up in overwhelming numbers, James. That's what we can do about it. I realize that's I realize that's 10 months down the road, but 10 months will go by fairly quickly, and in the meantime, we can be raising hell with our elected representatives, particularly our Republicans, encouraging them to man up, get some guts, stand up to this guy, stop being wimps.
Yeah, well, I got a game plan to win back 11 of the 12 Republican House seats in California. I just got to get into your...
Okay.
I got that vertebrae, but...
Okay, well, good on you, James. Good plans are always a good thing, particularly when they're implemented. James, thank you for the call. It's nice to hear from you, and sorry to hear about your back there. Been there, done that. At 27 minutes past the hour, I'll be back with more of your calls on Anything Goes Weekend on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Fair and only slightly unbalanced. I'll be right back with your calls here on Anything Goes Weekend. Stay with us. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is A History of the World in 6 Plagues, How Contagion, Class, and Captivity Shaped Us from Cholera to COVID-19. Book was published in March of this year. This is from the prologue. I rarely enjoy, and it's by Edna Bonhomme, Bonhomme. I believe that's how it's pronounced. She writes, I rarely enjoy an entire night of rest without interruption. I fixate on the whorls of brass on a light fixture or a stray fly. Like many insomniacs, my angst has an origin story. It began when I was a child and is bound in my memories like a cankerous sore. In the summer of 1988, after nearly a week of high temperatures and perennial diarrhea, my parents, both in their early 20s, took me in desperation to Jackson Memorial Hospital, the same public infirmary in Miami where my mother would later work as a janitor. After a series of tests, I was diagnosed with typhoid fever. I spent a month there at 4 years old, lonely and scared, curled up small in a hospital bed that felt huge. The stale air wafted through my nose while the EKG machine rattled through the night. I heard the buzzing of the fluorescent lights as the stiffness of the bed pressed up against my body. Unable to swallow without feeling nauseous, I could barely eat. According to my aunts and parents, I nearly died. Hyperbole is a familiar register for my elders, their dramatic tales making for entertaining family gatherings. But for once, their alarm at my sluggishness and flushed skin made sense. I was seriously ill. Unmoored from myself with a deep headache, my throat burned and my cough echoed throughout the room. When my relatives visited me, I skulked along the ward corridors, dragging my tiny legs slowly from the bedroom into the playroom. But the worst part was that when the nurses arrived with my favorite fruit, mango, I barely touched the plate. Instead, I glared at them with repulsion and at every other nutrient with irritation as I crumbled into a state of fatigue. What had started as a fever turned into a curse that my miniature body, mind, and spirit could no longer bear. My hospitalization stretched on primarily to get me to a place of health, but also to ensure that I could not infect others. I lost weight. As each day turned into night, I heard the sounds of the nurses as they moved around, shaken. My decline, my high temperature, and eventually my progress were left to the staff. Most of the time, they confined me to the bed in the room, unable to move as I pleased or join the games of my friends who I could see in the playground in my mind's eye. In my confinement, I felt like I was outside of myself. This month of hospitalization has had a life of its own in the years afterward. In the early hours of the morning, as I am laying in bed, the early memories of captivity returns. I am reminded of the waves of tears that flowed down my round. My parents would leave, and the sense of being trapped. When one is bedridden with a life-threatening disease or a chronic illness, one might find oneself obsessed with death. I was too young to understand the cause or nature of my condition, but had a sense that death was something foreboding, a darkness hanging over me. Restless, I craved climbing the coconut tree in our backyard and searching for ladybugs and my cousins. My fear was driven by the conviction that I would not wake up the next time I closed my eyes. More than my parents' embraces and promises of safety muttered in Creole, or the icy ball of the nurse's thermometer, the hospital bed was the most consistent thing I felt. The details of this period are less significant than the impact it created, how 3 decades later I feel irrevocably out of place when entering a hospital. I absorbed the hushed voices, the pastel-colored walls, and the Spartan hospital gowns. I could hear the doctors' voices, but could not understand what they were saying. The syllables rattled through the air, meaningless sounds. Barely able to articulate my thoughts in either Creole or English, I was a callow girl lost in a room of tubes and bright lights, obsessed with my plans to escape. I couldn't see past my hospital bedroom, my mom, in the sense that my restraint was my punishment for pushing a friend off the slide, as I recall doing in my local playground shortly before I was taken ill. All I could do was count the number of times my parents came per day, or the moments the nurses came to feed me. I had no control over anything, what I ate, where I went, when I moved. Even when I imagined playing with my friends at the beach or pictured the sugarcane stalks in our backyard, my thoughts were dimmed by the atmosphere. When others entered the room, even my family, I felt they were surveying me, taking the measure of the bed, the equipment, and my body. Now I find that a bed, even when lying next to a friend or lover, is also a place of unease. Will they disappear in the middle of the night once I'm asleep, or will their presence comfort me? For months after my infection with typhoid fever, I felt the profound injustice of being forced indoors and restrained, unable to feel the humidity, the humid, heavy Miami wind blowing on my face, or watch the luxury sailboats with sunburned passengers splash across the calm water of Biscayne Bay. I learned how to sit still with my thoughts. Even today, hospitals agitate me, not because of their stiff chairs or drab walls or even their bland art, but because of my dread. Medical institutions remind me of my most profound envy for people who can sleep a whole night without interruption or harm. In the late 19th century, typhoid fever was one of the most prevalent diseases in America. When Mary Mallon, popularly known as Typhoid Mary, was identified as the asymptomatic carrier of the disease, physicians believed she had infected families in New York City for whom she cooked. The book is A History of the World in 6 Plagues. Help support Progressive Radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio, and tag you're it. So MAGA Mike and the Republicans want a religious test for people running for public office. They want to know that you are sufficiently Christian to be worthy of being elected. Right. MAGA Mike is one of these 7 mountain evangelicals. There are 7 domains where these dominionists believe that we need to have religion completely take them over. Education, religion, family, business, government, military, arts and entertainment, and the media. Seriously. This is not what Jesus was preaching when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. This is the opposite, in fact, of what Jesus was teaching. It's the opposite of Matthew 25, where Jesus said the only way to get to heaven is by feeding the hungry, healing the sick, helping the poor. This is counter-Christian, anti-Christian, in fact. In fact, I think you could say it is the Antichrist's work. There's a piece about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour, and picking up your calls here today. CJ in Shreveport, Louisiana. Hey, CJ, what's up?
Hey. Well, I missed getting to talk to Congressman Jayapal, Congressperson Jayapal. Anyway, she had mentioned needing more political parties. I think we need fewer.
Okay. Why?
Not a one-party system, one fewer than that.
Oh, none? Yeah, that's what George Washington wanted.
The Constitution does not refer to political parties at all, and George Washington said don't do them.
That's right, and so did James Madison in Federalist 10.
Yeah. So
I think that's fighting
just think
human
about
nature.
What all that would imply.
I think that's fighting human nature. People instinctively want to band together in community. In this case, that community is called a political party. It's how we're wired.
Yeah, but they could certainly not have the power they have. Choosing slates of electors, the people should be voting for the electors directly.
Yeah.
Under their own name.
If you're talking about getting rid of the Electoral College,
well, not just getting rid of the Electoral College, at least reforming it so that the electors are chosen individually by the people, not by the parties. Remember, about the first time I called you, it was about Mike Johnson's, at least what I'm pretty sure was Mike Johnson's scheme to use the fact that some electors, Democratic electors, were constitutionally violating, holding public office at the time.
Yeah. Well, also there's the faithless elector thing that he was trying to exploit.
Right. Yeah. Well, the faithless electors, quote unquote, are the ones that are doing it right.
Yeah. Well, they're doing what the Constitution envisioned. I mean, the founders put that whole system in there because, they were not quite certain that this democracy thing was going to work out, and the presidency is a really, really big deal. But I think its time has passed. I'm with you. CJ, thank you. Very well said. Derek in Denver. Hey, Derek, what's on your mind today?
Hey, what's going on, man? Big fan of yours, and always want to start off by giving a compliment and thank you for what you do before I give a criticism.
Okay.
Yes, that's a respectful criticism, of course. It's about what you said about, the Green Party and kind of that swing vote in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
My counterpoint is, I think most of those folks who voted for Jill Stein or went, libertarian, eye roll, I think most of those folks probably weren't going to vote for Clinton no matter what. I think most of those folks were so bitter over the primaries and what happened with Bernie and all that stuff. I think people were just so ready to buck the system that, a lot of folks went to Trump that, were registered DNC and were supporting Sanders.
The post-election surveys show that what you're saying has a lot of truth to it, Derek, but it wouldn't have been I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. My recollection is it was something like maybe between 30 and 40% of them would have voted for the Democrat if Jill Stein had not been on the ballot. 50, 60% of them, maybe 70% of them would not have, simply would not have voted. But even if that had happened, that would have prevented Donald Trump from becoming president.
And I'm with you on that. Like, that's a travesty, right? And I feel for all the people who've been hurt.
And the solution is, instant runoff voting. And we've got it here in Oregon now. In Portland, we have instant runoff voting. I mean, this is not rocket science. It was proposed by John Stuart Mill in 1861. So, we need to fix the system. I'm all in favor of third, fourth, fifth parties. I voted Green in 2000. I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000. But I lived in Vermont, where I knew that my vote for Ralph Nader was not going to hurt Al Gore. If I had lived in Florida, I would have voted for Al Gore. But, I'm a fairly well-informed voter. I think a lot of people who vote for third parties are probably not, although, I get it. Some people are just, I'm going to vote my conviction no matter what. And I have a lot of respect for that. But, we right at this moment, literally, the fate and future of democracy in the United States, the fate and future of our ability to be a free nation, of you and I to walk down the street and not have goons with masks come up and beat the crap out of us or throw us in jail for no reason, is at stake. And I just don't think that we can take the chance saying that, we're going to support some third party that all of a sudden has decided that it's going to go nationwide.
I couldn't agree more. But I do think the only thing I want to say, because I know you got to go, I know you got more, is I think it was really important to send a message to the DNC in 2016. and let them know, like, people need progressive candidates. People need, that fire. We need that fire. To get over that.
I don't know if you were listening to this show back in 2016, but right up until after the primaries, I was a big advocate for Bernie, to the point that I had Democrats who were pissed off at me, refusing to talk to me, threatening me, all kinds of stuff. But then, once Bernie stepped out, once he lost the primary, and do you know who gave more speeches on behalf of Hillary Clinton than any other candidate, any other person in 2016? It was Bernie Sanders. He traveled the country for Hillary Clinton. And so at that point, I said, okay, I'll get with the game, and I became a big supporter of Hillary Clinton. Only after Bernie said, no way I'm going to get this, so please, it's more important to have a Democrat in office than to have Donald Trump. And he was right. So, there's some nuance here, Derek.
I completely agree. Last question I have for you, maybe something to keep in mind. I think if we change the comparisons from Nazi Germany to Stalin Russia and the gulags, I mean, they're definitely concentration camps, but the way that we're treating our immigrants, we're starving them, we're not systematically killing them yet. I think that would have more resonance with the Republicans.
You're probably right. And in fact, we should call them Putin's gulags, like the place where he put Navalny.
There we go.
Yeah.
I just feel like you know so much about history, you would be able to add a lot to that part. So.
Well, thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Brother Tom.
Yep.
Hey, I appreciate you taking the call, man.
My pleasure. Good talking to you. Thank you. Marilyn in Chicago. Hey, Marilyn, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
I just think, the information that you disseminate all the time is just so important. Like today when you told us about the glyphosate, is it? Yeah. Pesticides.
Yeah, glyphosate, Roundup,
Glyphosate, yes, thank you. I should write that down. Glyphosate, it's just deplorable because it is, I have read that in the past, how harmful it is. And it's just, but the thing is, there's just so much disinformation that is disseminated to the public. And I just feel the Democrats have to wake up and start putting this information out everywhere. It should be on social media. It should be on television and the networks. They should run ads on Fox News, on all the conservative radio stations. I mean, I don't understand why, Christine Ohm was everywhere disseminating her lies about immigrants being terrible rapists and murderers, and that now that we've gotten rid of them, our crime is so much lower. She disseminates that kind of commercial, but we don't. And I just feel that even the Republicans that I know, they don't know all of the information, the way he's trying to turn our country into
They've got the billionaires on their side, Marilyn. They've got, the Bezos and Zuckerberg, the Epstein billionaire class. And, the Democrats don't. I mean,
Well, can we run ads, do you think?
With what money?
Some of these networks?
With what money? I mean, you got 150 billionaire families that threw in billions of dollars to make Donald Trump president, and you had 3 billionaires who were explicitly supporting Kamala Harris. It's disproportionate warfare, or whatever the old phrase is.
I would like them to, just try to get as much as they can to at least run some.
And they need to be buying radio and TV stations. And but again, we don't have billionaires to do this, and the right wingers do because their billionaires want tax cuts. So, it's just.
And I'm just concerned that false information is going to, either keep people away because they're, so disillusioned. Or, more of their people will show up. I hope that doesn't happen because we need to stand up against this tyranny.
I agree. Marilyn, well said. Thank you so much for the call. And thanks for listening to WCPT. Yep, good talking to you. 44 and a half, almost 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in just a minute. It's Anything Goes Weekend.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where despair is not an option. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Holly in Washington, D.C., you are on the air.
Hello. I want to let you and your listeners know about another alternative event to the State of the Union, and it's called the State of the Swamp, and it's live at the National Press Club, and it's put on by Defiance.org, which is Miles Taylor,
Yep.
and the Portland Fraud Brigade,
Yep.
which
Yep.
I think is very.
I'm familiar with it.
Made 40 speakers.
And they're going to be live streaming it too.
Yeah, and it's free. You can go on Defiance.org. I think it's on Substack, and I think it's on YouTube, so you can watch for free. And it's supposed to be like a 4-hour joyful and fun event, not tight-jawed and critical. And I think we all need a dose of that right now. So I just wanted to let people know that didn't know that.
Well, thank you. You did a marvelous job, Holly, and thank you for the public service announcement. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too. Jeff in Portland. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Happy Friday, Tom. Town Hall with Representative Jayapal. And I loved her assertion about focusing on Democratic primaries. She's singing my song. And to your concern about the Democratic Socialists, you mentioned Bernie just a few minutes ago. And, Zoran Mandani did it the right way by running in the Democratic primary. Bernie, of course, in 2016 and 2020 so famously did as well. And in my opinion, Tom, we need as many progressives running in our primaries as we can get, because the kind of enthusiasm and people power that these campaigns generate is how we take that Congress. Zoran had 100,000 volunteers knocking on doors and making phone calls. Organized people can defeat organized money. And make no mistake, Trump and the Republicans are going to do all they can to suppress the vote and intimidate would-be Democratic voters. So we need to use the Minnesota template of organized nonviolent resistance to protect the vote and get people safely to the polls in November. In the meantime, Tom, let's keep fighting fascism by stopping new ICE concentration camps from being built. Let's stop Trump from unconstitutionally attacking Iran, which he might start doing as early as tomorrow, according to Jeremy Scahill on Democracy Now! Your thoughts, and you did mention that refugees, they're going after legal refugees now. And the thing about that is, I read it on Common Dreams, that these people are vetted for years, and then they get here and they have to wait a year before they can apply for their green card, and that's when they're getting detained now.
That's right.
I mean, this is Niemöller's essay, but your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's mind-bogglingly criminal what this administration is doing. Particularly, they're doing it to the Afghan people who worked with our troops in Afghanistan, served as translators and things, who are here in the United States and apply as legitimate refugees. There's certainly others from other countries as well, but and the Haitians, that Trump wants to purge out of Ohio, they're going after the Haitians in Springfield. These people are legitimate refugees, and they deserve a space here in the United States. I realize they have brown skin, and that's got Trump and Vance and Homan and all these white guys all bent out of shape. But they're human beings. They have escaped horrors to come here, and Trump wants to throw them back. I mean, it's a death sentence. Jeff, thank you. Well said. Good talking to you as always. Thank you. 48 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back with you. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically, just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out.
I was tangled in the headlines.
It's here. Dolores Emma in New York City. Hey, Dolores Emma, what's up?
Hi. I just want to preface my remarks by saying God bless Bernie Sanders.
Yes, amen. Amen. And
Yeah,
may he
amen.
live long and prosper.
Yes, yes. May he live a long, long time. So I just want to say that I've been a news junkie for all of my life, and I've been quietly horrified ever since Trump rode down his fake gold escalator.
Yeah, it's not even gold. I don't know why people call it gold, but yeah, I get it.
Well, it's fake gold.
Okay.
As fake as he is, and as fake as the people that were there as he gave his announcement, because they were paid extra actors.
That's right, $50 an hour to stand and applaud.
Yeah, yeah. So I am extremely concerned about the way Trump is behaving. He is blatant. He is focused. He is, as you say, he'll probably ignore what the Supreme Court said today. And I'm very concerned that Project 2025 is a done deal, and that we may lose the midterms, and we have to continue to fight for the next election in 4 years. We can't give up. Yeah. But this is out of control. It's been out of control for a long time. We just haven't been able to accept this fact.
Yeah. No, I get it, Dolores Emma. I think your analysis is absolutely right. And this is why we can't, now is no time to sleep, right?
No.
I'm still saying you can sleep when you die. We've got to get out and we've got to get active. Dolores Emma, thank you so much. You said it so well. Lori in McLenny, Florida. Hey, Lori, what's up?
Hi. I just have two quick questions. I would like to help Democrats win in Florida, but the messaging, I was wondering what you thought about the corruption in contrast to losing our health care and how high prices are and places to live.
I think it's all the same thing.
Second,
those are the examples of the consequences of corruption.
Then maybe going with, in our area, it's very red. It's rural. And then going with the cruelty to children and human beings and the moral compass of, do you have morals? And thirdly, the Constitution.
Yeah.
And do you happen to know anywhere where I could get some copies for free of the Constitution? I've ordered one or two, but I'll hang up and let you speak.
There are some conservative groups that give away little booklets of the Constitution. The one that I have is one that you just buy. In fact, it's $2.95. But I don't. It's been a lot of years since I've encountered any of them. I'm not sure exactly. So you might want to. That's a great question to ask. One of the AI machines. Where could I get a free copy of the Constitution?
I tried that, and I'm working on it. I ordered myself one or two, but I was trying to see if I could get some to pass out in the area.
It would be a fine thing. Lori, I'm sorry, I don't know right off the top of my head, but check it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Sure enough, you too. Beachside Bill in Orlando. Hey, Bill. Hey, two Florida calls here back to back. What's up?
Afternoon, Tom. Hope everybody's well. And I think you can get copies of the Constitution through the ACLU. They have them. I got one a couple of years ago. I mean, the ACLU had them. So I want to focus on the Trump Epstein files, and I think you were talking about it the other day. We need to focus and call it the Trump Epstein files.
Yep.
So my Florida senator's name, the newest one, is Ashley Moody. She was Attorney General. She was elected Attorney General in 2019, right after Pam Bondi. Now, I fully believe Pam Bondi knew what was going on with Trump Epstein. So, but I would hope that that Ashley Moody would be focused on by the media, because they need to begin asking her questions, because she could have easily brought up the charges on Trump Epstein.
Oh, interesting.
But she didn't.
Yeah.
She could have in 2019.
So your senator might have been. You've got one senator who was involved in the largest Medicare scam in history, Rick Scott.
Yeah.
And your other one was the Attorney General who looked the other way around Epstein, apparently.
Yeah, she could have opened it up, because he had been arrested at the time, 2019, 2020.
Only the best people are in Florida, Bill.
Yeah, I know. No, it was really. Anyway, and one quick thing: everybody donate blood. I'm just one donation shy of 161 gallons. So that's what keeps me going.
Yeah,
it keeps me going.
It keeps you healthy.
Of it.
I'm telling you, it keeps you healthy.
Yep,
Bill, thanks a lot for the inspiration.
Thanks, Tom.
Good talking to you. Stan in East Los Angeles. Hey, Stan, what's up? Stan? Going once, going twice.
Yeah.
James in Clear Lake Oaks, California. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Well, first of all, Professor Tom, I watch you every morning, 5 days, sometimes 6 and 7 days a week on Free Speech
Well, thank
TV.
you. We just have a couple seconds, James, if you want to make a quick point.
Okay, so did Trump put tariffs on Putin, Russia?
I don't think we buy much from Russia. I'm not sure, frankly. No, I do remember. Russia was one of, I believe it was the only country we put no tariffs on at all.
Okay, so do you think the tariffs were Putin's idea so he could sell more goods to America?
I don't know.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I don't know. James, thanks a lot for the call. Hey, special thanks to Louise Hartman, Sean Taylor, Jamie Holly, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Frost, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jeremy Peterson, Connor Arroyo, Carna Verde, Josiah Wester, Martha Salinas, Mateo Robertson, Diane Russell, and Ruben Michaels, all the fine people who work on this program. And thank you to you for everything that you do for sharing the good word and spread, and getting out there and getting active. Tag you're it. Have a great weekend. I'll catch up with you on Monday. Stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.